there's a lot of connections with food service.
You gotta start thinking about something else like donuts. Before you know it, you know, it's gonna be on the hit list and they won't allow you to sell donuts.
Well, we did grandfather it in back years when all that wellness stuff started, the vertical town.
So it's grandfather?
Yeah.
For life?
Well,
How
does that
some
work?
board, some healthy board gets in there.
Yeah, exactly.
How come we're not selling apples?
They go over really well.
Superintendent's
Yeah.
comment.
We don't have to drive to Fox.
Go right to
We can
Max.
Go to Max and get it, right?
Right after community forum.
Well, the one I have, it's actually up here. It's before apples.
These are crazy. This is way too much. Community forum.
Okay.
The donuts are pretty good.
All right, TV's on, we're in session.
TV's
Welcome
on.
everyone to the January 8th edition of the Litchfield School Board. Please rise.
Same.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Small revisions to the agenda. We're going to move the LEA contract vote to just after community forum, to move it up so people in attendance can leave if they'd like. Other than that, we'll follow it as
And I
is.
yield my time now.
In place of the superintendent's comments. Other than that, summary of non-public actions from the December 18th, 2013 non-public session. Mr. Miller made a motion to approve the non-public minutes of December 11th, 2013 as written. Mr. Leva seconded. Motion carried 5-0. Correspondence. I think the only one we had was a letter from Mr. Garrett. Pull it up. He had originally written us an email regarding Common Core, to which Mr. York replied that we understand he does not like Common Core, but it would be more prudent if he instead offered us solutions rather than problems. To which Mr. Garrett replied again, and this will all be attached to the minutes if anyone cares to read it in depth, that he hopes that school board members do not ask community members to cease writing about their concerns, and that he hopes that the school board is listening to these concerns and reading emails and following their advice, and other things. Again, I'll attach them to the minutes for everyone else to read. Any other correspondence? No? Approval of draft minutes, 12/18/13.
So made.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 4-0-0. Community forum.
You're not lucky.
Yeah, yeah.
No, because they'll give you all the attachments, not just the stuff that's.
Kathleen Follis, 8 Mike Lane. I would just like to ask the school board, as the contract comes up before you in a couple of minutes, when you sit and look at this, please look at it as a school board member, not as a resident. You have a choice at the ballot box. That's your personal choice. Right now, though, you're a school board member, and your position is to put things towards the voter. So I hope that when the contract comes before you, you look at it in that view, so that you can support, so that we as voters have a choice, instead of just the 4 or 5 of you.
Thank you.
My name
Okay, just make sure you recognize yourself.
is Chuck Mower. I reside at 4 Depot Street, Merrimack. I'm a district employee, a member in good standing of the Litchfield Education Association and the NEA.
Can I just make one comment? Normally it's community input, but given that the contract's here, we'll let you speak as long as, it's, go ahead and speak, just.
I'll be brief.
Okay.
I'm here to inform you that I contest the ratification vote of the LEA as invalid
Okay, oh,
and will be taking
Hang on.
such steps as
Order.
okay,
necessary.
give me 1
Mr.
second.
Mower.
I don't know if that's an appropriate thing to have a discussion about right now. We haven't even presented the.
It's a community forum.
It's a community for the Litchfield community, but we haven't even presented the tentative agreement yet, so we
It
can't.
doesn't matter. This is a community forum.
It's a community forum for
The
the,
public has an opportunity to bring something to your attention.
I understand, but you're not part of the Litchfield public. You're a resident of Merrimack. I would allow you to speak openly. However, I'm concerned that what you're speaking about isn't something we can talk about at this time. We haven't even presented the tentative agreement yet to the school board.
I am not trying to influence what the school board talks about. I'm simply here to convey some information.
But the way you had started, it concerns me a little bit, because you talked about the process being invalid, and that's something that happened in private and not necessarily in public, and it's not something that I think we can talk about just yet.
Now, I don't expect you to talk about it.
No, but I'm saying it's not public information.
What I'm saying is now public information.
Yeah, and that's a concern, is what I'm saying.
Well, do I have the right to free speech or not?
Yes, but if it was something, the negotiation process is a process that happens in private, and we have to do it in good faith under state law. It hasn't been exposed yet. If you speak about it, it's not something that can happen yet. If you'd like, we can talk about it non-public later on if you have concerns, but right now it's not a good time for it.
Well, let me just wrap this up for you.
No. Can you please have a seat? We can't talk about that right now.
I'm not expecting you to talk about it.
I'm saying that you can't even mention it right now in public, is what I'm saying.
How do you know what I'm going to mention? I haven't finished it.
It's just the start of it. It's just
Excuse me?
the start of it. You're talking about a process that isn't public information yet. The negotiation process between the school board and the LEA is a private process that can't be talked about in public yet.
I'm not going to talk about the process.
You just said the process was invalid.
I'm telling you that I contest the ratification.
Okay, and that as well, the
personally
LEA process is also a private
Contest
process.
the ratification. I'm bringing this information to you and the public because it's important information. I personally am contesting the ratification as invalid.
Okay.
And I'll be taking such steps as
Hey,
necessary
Mr. Mower, excuse me, you're on a motion.
and advisable
Mr. Mower,
to
you're on a
secure
motion.
my rights and
Okay,
privileges.
can you please sit back down, please?
No, this is it. It's in writing. You now have it. You can make it part of the written record. Signed and delivered. Thank you very much.
Any more community input? Mr. Garrett?
Jason Gritt, 11 Perry Court. I don't know nothing about that ratification,
Okay.
so I'm not even,
You're a Litchfield resident,
I'm a
right?
Litchfield resident.
I'm just
Still,
saying, we have a lot to do tonight.
hopefully.
Please be
It's
brief.
quick and easy. I'm happy that you read my correspondence. What I wanted to add was, I actually did submit an example of what, although I don't agree with Common Core, it's not that I dislike Common Core, I just don't think it's the best option. And I've said repeatedly that if we are going to move forward, we should at least look at what the issues that the professionals see in the process and add to them, supplement them. And that's what I submitted, was there are folks like Mr. Hirsch who acknowledge that Common Core is going forward in this country and has put together something to mitigate the downsides to it. So I would suggest that you just at least look at it, contemplate it, and see where we can possibly supplement what we're going to be doing to fill the holes that are identified in that process. Mainly, I wanted to talk about the default budget. I still see a couple things in there. The self-funded line is an increase of $23,666. I don't believe that's a contracted issue or doesn't fit within the default budget requirements in RSA. Utilities are another struggle for me because, again, those don't fit based upon and granted, we're going to stipulate that we don't always agree, not everybody agrees, but I'm still presenting my case and where my challenge will lie. And then thirdly, on the day in March that we choose not to pass a proposed budget and we go to default budget, the very next meeting where you guys adopt that, what was default budget as an operating budget, it is forever then an operating budget. And at that point, when you do things like paving out of that operating budget, that becomes a one-time expenditure, which now comes out of the default budget for the next calculation of the default budget. That's a one-time expenditure. So that was in the operating budget. You chose to spend that money. That now comes out in the default calculation because it is a one-time expenditure. So that's the one I can remember off the top of my head. But just because it was in a default budget last year, that's only default until you guys sign off on the making it your operating budget for the next following year. Same rules apply to those monies. So I would expect, my expectation is that 55-ish the 23 self-funded, and the utilities. And kind of like Mr. Mowers, that is my notice. You have plenty of time before you submit the default budget finally to investigate those things. You can't say you didn't know about them. I've brought them to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more community input? And with that, we have the LEA agreement. I'm happy to report that the school board and the LEA came to contract agreements, and that the LEA ratified the agreement last night, I think. So now it's our turn to approve it. To summarize it, the school board's pretty familiar with it, but to summarize it for the public, it's a 3-year agreement. In the first year, the teachers would receive, the scale itself would be modified 1 step, and the teachers would receive a step, for a total cost of $421,000. $208,000 of that is offset by savings in healthcare. They've agreed to move to a different healthcare program that saves us a substantial amount of money. The second year is a step.
Step increases for steps 1 to 14.
1 to 14. The top step gets half of a modified step plus 300 for a cost of $195,000. The third year is another modified step for all people on the scale except for the top scale. They get the second half of their half a step plus another $300. And the price of that is $175,000. In the second 2 years, the employee contributions to healthcare also go up 1%, which results in another $17,000 in savings each of those years. So for the total accumulation of the 3-year contract is $584,000.
Do you mind if I summarize
Yeah,
the
you
language
could,
pieces?
in the language pieces.
The way that that's costed is done in some cases, common sense, but the way it has to be reported legally, it makes assumptions about teachers all staying, that there will be no savings due to turnover in teachers. It calculates the healthcare saving only once, because after that it's not a saving, even though it's roughly $200,000 less. The saving is only calculated for the warrant article one point in time. Last year we did show savings in the second year of the contract there, but did not do the subtraction, just for clarification. With respect to language changes in the tentative agreement, beginning in 2016-17, teachers agreed to reduce sick days. Teachers who are already under contract would go from 15 sick days a year down to 12, and new teachers would have 10 a year. Also, a cap on the number of days is decreased to 110 for new teachers, if I recall. The healthcare plan change as Mr. Barker pointed out, is net savings to the district. There are 2 plans again, and in the year 2, the additional savings of $17,100 estimated has to do with the teachers who are opt for the more expensive plan, increasing their percentage of the share from 85-15 down to higher than that, and the district contribution goes down. Third change, deletion of the language that requires non-continuing contract teachers to be RIFT first, which is a significant piece. And some other relatively minor stuff. I believe we will have a more formal summary for you in the morning, and we should have that out hopefully tomorrow, Friday at the very latest.
Any discussion before a vote?
Well, I'm actually, I know that both parties worked very hard on this agreement. I don't think this agreement moves the education process in the right direction for our students or the taxpayers. But if it was a school board decision only, I wouldn't support the contract as it is. But I will support it to move it to the voters. I will discuss it with the budget committee tomorrow. And we will let, on March 11th, we'll let the voters decide. But I don't believe the contract is moved in the right direction of what it needs to solve.
I personally think it's a good contract. Over the last couple of years, we've stressed the importance of improving math scores, improving test scores, improving NECAP scores. And we've done a lot of things to do that. We've changed our curriculum, we've bought new textbooks, we've bought new technology. We've got courses, we emphasize math in different places, we brought in math experts. But I think the most important piece of the equation is the teachers, and we need good quality teachers in front of the students. I think this contract helps us move in that direction. If you look at, historically, if you look, 5 years ago, if you looked at surrounding districts and comparable sized districts, Litchfield was paid about the average, I think, right in the middle. Today, if you look at those same districts, Litchfield's at the bottom by several $1,000s at every grade level. So we've obviously, in the last 5 years or so, I think salaries have been frozen 3 of those years. Our most experienced teachers at the top have, I think, only received 1% raise in the last 5 years. And we've fallen well behind the average. And I think it's time that we move them back up to the average. If you actually look at this agreement, at the end of the 3 years, if you look at the average salaries, the starting salaries and the ending salaries, we're actually just going to be right back at the average of this year. So we're not, this agreement isn't outrageous. It's obviously a lot of money, but I think it's the right thing to do. It's putting us back where we need to be as far as what we need to pay our teachers in order to attract and retain the great teachers that we have. There's also a lot we've received in return. The benefits, it's going to be a tremendous savings. We can only recognize $200,000 in savings, but over the course of the next 3, 4, 5 years, the savings we're going to see in comparison to our old healthcare plan, as the two grow, this one's going to grow at a much less rate compared to the current plan we're on. And I think, again, we can't put it on the ballot because there's no way of proving it, but at the end of the three years, the healthcare savings alone are probably going to pay for the majority of the contract. So that's my opinion.
Well, I'll weigh in on this.
I'm shocked, Trish.
Well, it's similar language to what we had last year. And last year, the voter turned it down, and it was a lot less in cost. While I understand we need to do right by the teachers, we also need to strike that balance with the voter. And I think the voter would be upset to see this, and I have to work on that.
Any more comments? All those in favor?
Did we get a motion?
Oh, we didn't have any motion to approve. So we're making a motion to approve the.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract as presented.
I'll second. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Abstained? Motion carries 4-1-0. Excellent.
Do we want to ask, we do have the negotiating committee here, if they want to address the board?
Sure. Does anyone want to address the board?
Being president's a good thing. Welcome to the table. I'm Carolyn Late, LMS music teacher and president of the Litchfield Education Association. So on behalf of my negotiations team behind me, most of whom were able to come tonight, and the association, would like to thank the board for supporting and ratifying and moving it to the voters, to let the voters have their say. We look forward to working with the school board to explaining it to the town, to the budget committee. I know last year, the budget committee and the school board allowed me as president to come to the budget committee and help in the conversation and discussion. I'm more than willing to do that. I believe the meeting's tomorrow night. So if it's acceptable and you'd like me there, just let me know, and I'd be certainly doing my best to help explain the agreement to them, so.
Beneficial. Good okay with.
Any help swaying the budget committee is always welcome.
It seemed to work well. I think it was helpful to have the two sides. We were able to
Like the
answer
7-0
questions. So, so yeah, I'll be there tomorrow night, and we just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. School board comments. All right, committee reports, budget committee?
We haven't met
Did we meet?
after our
Probably got
last
canceled
meeting.
last week, did? Did we?
I was wondering, I think we met,
This Thursday
in,
afternoon.
one, yeah, we presented the end of the budget and things like that, and, Andrew's sent us a lot of emails looking for information, and Frank's been dodging drilling for oil.
We struck oil today. Say we had a delivery at 4 o'clock this evening. We've capped the well.
Beverly Hills, Billy, shooting the ground.
Don't call me Jethro. Do not call me Jethro, Mr. York.
And, but we went through, they're hoping that the school board, would have their warrant articles approved, so they can discuss them. They've already scheduled a tentative meeting for next Tuesday, because their presentation is next Thursday. So Andrew's already posted a meeting for next Tuesday, if needed, because both the school and the town keep adding things to their plate.
Do they need our warrant articles for their hearing, or is it just the budget?
Anything with costs, they
It's
tend
not what the
to,
law says.
No, they
The
don't.
law says
No,
budget
that's fine.
only.
then we're good.
That's my reading. You may get a different reading from,
Well, they normally vote like on teachers' contracts and.
Yeah. but
They
Yeah.
have to on that, but
Like that.
for their budget presentation, it's only the school district's proposed budget.
That's fine.
Yep. But
I
it
think
is in your
they're
packet
looking
this
to
evening. Yep,
have
they are in your packet.
An opinion on the, on the articles that they decide to have an opinion on. I think they want that, that opportunity. And I don't believe they voted a bottom line yet.
Well, I do have a bottom line. I'll share that with the committee if you wish. The school board recommended to the budget committee a total general fund operating balance, a budget of $19,877,906. The budget committee did reduce that by $115,890 down to $19,762,015. Interestingly, the salaries and benefits was cut from 75.05% of the total budget, which was recommended, down to 75.009. So they actually increased some of that area, even though there was a reduction. In some areas, they went up as well. They did make an increase to student transportation, as the school board had recommended to them. They did accept that, not to the extent that we were looking for. I believe it was 15%.
I was going to say the number wasn't quite the same.
It wasn't quite, no, it
They
wasn't.
went for the $40,000 number, not the $100,000.
They went to the 41,693 to be exact, and they did accept the board's recommendation on the increase in the water rates. So there were some changes. We do have some bottom line, and I did share that with Mr. Cutter today, and some other information on reconciling that information. So I'm assuming tomorrow night we'll have some discussion to reconcile that up for a bottom line.
So that's the bottom line as of going into tomorrow.
Tomorrow evening's meeting, correct?
They've already voted all the different budgets, right?
They have, but the town keeps, not to sidebar, but the town keeps adding and changing the ebb and flow of their budget. So they have learned how to open up budgets and make revotes very well.
Right.
Based on the town's process. So I imagine that they could very easily look to open our various lines tomorrow. So hopefully not, and we can just get a bottom line vote and move on.
Excellent. Any other committees meet? Did the buildings committee meet?
Oh,
yesterday?
yes, we met last night, actually, and looked at some of the different costs that we could propose for warrant articles, as in cameras
Mhm.
for the schools, panic alarms for the schools was another category that we talked about, and also the,
Yeah, we did, that
what
was
was
the
that called?
discussion. The,
Getting in and out of the building,
access
Card
roads.
access.
access control.
So, Mr. Markowitz, will we have a warrant article for that?
That is included in the packet. That is warrant article number 5 that you'll see in the draft of warrant articles.
Oh, it's not the bottom, okay. Excellent. Did they, I guess we can get to it when we get to the warrant article, but were they basically, for the most part, in favor of these items, or?
There was a lot of talking around and around and around, so it was not an easy decision to come to a conclusion, because it does have a fairly heavy price tag. You know, so we wanted to put to the voter something that was palatable and probably most important to do right away.
Okay. Which items were those?
That was the panic alarm and the access control.
Any more questions for the committees? All right. Mr. Thompson, you're up with the GMS Principals Report.
All right. I began in my report talking about December 11th, our in-service day. This was our second such day this year, and it has been a great benefit to the school. In short, the teachers met to continue the work on quality performance assessments, both in a big group and then in grade level groups. And our goal is to administer the next round of assessments in January, although we had a meeting of the small team yesterday, and we may postpone that to allow more time for teaching. The paraprofessionals worked on disability awareness in the first hour, and then they did exercises around and discussion around fine motor language development in the second hour. I want to thank our specialist related services team for putting that together for the paraprofessionals. That was a really helpful thing. The January is a big month for assessments. We're going to be doing NWEA maps for some students beginning next Monday, and we'll be doing Ames Web assessments, the winter benchmark. And we went over that today in the faculty meeting to talk about how we would get all of that done. Just an alert for parents, though they know. The second quarter ends on January 24th, and we have report cards going home on the next week. We had applied for the Smarter Balance field test to be part of that so that we could experience that firsthand. We were turned down based simply on demographics. There were probably a lot of elementary schools, you know, like ours applying. But we also became aware that we could do the practice test. So even though we aren't part of the field test, there is a practice test. And we spent half of our faculty meeting today doing the fourth grade math practice test with the idea that we want teachers to see firsthand what the experience will be like for students. It was quite eye-opening, actually. It was good. We began...
Ms. Thompson, is that something that you can send to the board? Is that something we can just
Yes,
access?
yes, I could. We actually talked, because we're going to do our winter reading and math carnival again this year, and we thought it would be a great station to have in that if we could have parents see. Of course, we chose a date after voting, so we have to rethink that. We have to have it, you know, earlier in the month, because it really is an important issue around the request for a computer teacher for next year.
So you're gonna move it to, you're gonna move that?
That's what we think. We have to look at the calendar and see if we can do that.
But you'll send us a link?
I will indeed. Yep. Can I use your pen?
Sure.
Link. And you can keep doing it again and again, so you can kind of
So
go
I
back.
get it right?
It's the,
So
well,
I'm smarter than a
it-
fourth grader?
I will, that's what we call the segment in the meeting, are you smarter than a fourth grader? However, I will tell you, it does not tell you if you're right, so you have to just kind of figure that out.
You'll have to ask Leah and Ryan to correct them.
All right, so some acknowledgements. We want to thank Sandy Johnstone for putting together our gift to the students on Friday, the day before vacation. The whole faculty gets on the stage and we sing a few holiday songs, and the kids just love it. It was really fun. Also, Barb Town plays the piano for that. She takes time off a regular job to do that. And Maureen Sherwin presented a little play for the kids. It was quite fun. We are doing kindergarten registration tonight. We're starting it because we have to begin this early, and we'll also continue tomorrow from 10 to 2. I sent home a message I'll talk about in a minute, but there is an advantage to the school to know early how many kindergarten students we have coming in. It also helps parents because they're more likely to get the AM or PM session that they request if they register early. We usually have a waiting list for one or other session, although it can change year to year which one that is. The PTO father-daughter dance has been moved from January 24th to the spring. They are at last ward still looking for a chairman for that event, but it is moved to the spring. PTO Monarchs Night is on February 23rd, which is the Sunday of February vacation, and the PTO Bingo Night is coming up on March 14th. Our annual holiday concert was held on December 10th to a standing room only crowd. We brought in every available freestanding chair of adult size, and we still had too few. So I'm thinking next year we have to request gym chairs. But at any rate, I'd like to thank Mrs. LaBelle for doing a great job and the students for doing a wonderful performance. We had a lockdown drill on December 18th. We moved from evacuation drill to indoor drills in the cold weather. And after discussing good ways for both the PTO and the school to communicate with parents in a convenient fashion, we started up a new principal's message that we're going to send only using email on Blackboard, not the automated voice. The feedback is that for most things, except for school closings, I don't think that was mentioned, but for most things, they'd rather just get a text. So we're going to send that out as an attachment for email only. And then the last thing is just to mention, I think people are probably aware that the school did run out of oil on December 16th. I'd like to thank our fabulous maintenance staff because it was a nighttime event. They discovered it right away. Dave came in and spent much of the night bleeding and restarting the boiler, and we obviously got a delivery to make that happen. So I just want to make sure the board's aware of that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lefferts.
Okay. You're going to hear some familiar items in my report, similar in some ways to Scott's. So going back to the 11th, the late arrival day, our focus this year on both of those days was performance assessment. We have five staff members involved in the performance assessment network that we've been working on not only this year but last year. And the goal for that day was to have implemented an assessment, have student samples, and share those in groups by team. We follow the same protocols essentially that we follow when we go to the network sessions. It went well. Teachers have been able to work on this not only individually but on that team level and bounce some ideas off each other. And we've done it both ways in departments and in teams. That day we worked in teams, so they were able to get some good feedback from some of their peers who aren't necessarily teaching the same area as them, but just to get some different feedback there. Paras were also involved in training that day. Carrie Finnegan was working with them on the Now Network, which is the professional development network we have online for paras for the district, and they felt the day was very beneficial as well. As I mentioned, our next training for the network is coming up. That'll be February 6th, and our team will be going to that out in Manchester. Also, Scott mentioned the assessment schedule in January picks up a little bit. It's kind of our mid-year benchmark check-in on all of our students. So we will be given the 2 reading tests for Ames Web and the 2 math tests. The reading tests assess fluency and comprehension, the math application, and computation. And so all the students will again be tested on that. Not only do we have all students tested 3 times a year this year on the Ames Web, but we also use it for progress monitoring, which we've talked about a little bit this year. So we have a number of students who are below proficient in reading and math who are keeping close tabs on through Ames Web and doing that progress monitoring at least every couple weeks to check in. Mostly in that is our reading specialists and our math tutors that are doing those tier of interventions. I had mentioned that kneecap scores are coming out in late January. Results will be mailed home in February. Our RTI team continues to get a lot of work done. Carrie Finnegan's involved with a cohort that the Department of Ed is offering training for throughout this year. And I believe they have 5 training sessions, so they've gone to 2. They're going to 1 tomorrow. And it's proving very beneficial to our chat team, which is our child assistance team, and really focusing on our tier of interventions with kids, particularly tier 3 and tier 2, those kids that really fall below proficient that need those specific interventions. So they've been doing a lot of work as a committee and then going to those network meetings every couple of months. We had a staff meeting today. One of the themes this year in our staff meetings is a book study, the book Core 6, which I think you've heard about through Julie's presentations, but it's a book that really focuses on instructional strategies, focusing on the revised standards, and just adding to that toolbox for teachers, moving more toward that critical thinking and transfer of skills and deeper level cognitive rigor type of instruction. So today we talked about inductive learning and how to use vocabulary to bring out focused ideas, and Martha Thayer did that training today. Our reading specialist did a great job. If you guys remember, I believe it was 4 years ago, John Halligan came and presented to our student body up here at Campbell High School. We bussed our students up here to the auditorium. He's coming back this year. I think I mentioned this back in December. He's coming back at the end of January. So he's going to do 2 different assemblies, one for grades 5 and 6, the other for grades 7 and 8. I want to thank First Student. They've donated the buses for that day, so we'll have buses, kind of a shuttle going for the 2 groups, and there'll be a lot more information coming out to parents in the near future. But we will have a parent information night on January 29th. The focus of his presentation is on bullying prevention, and he had a tragedy in his own family involving his son that he talks about, and doesn't focus as much on that, though he does talk about that, as much as he does on how you can take control of these situations that happen, and not be a bystander, and have a positive impact on your peers. So the end of his story is actually very positive, and he really does a nice job. He travels nationally and does a lot of presentations. But I listed the website there. You can take a look at that. If you have any questions about that, please let us know. Not sure what happened to GMS, but we were selected for the Smarter Balanced Assessment Pilot.
Really? 'Cause we
Yes,
were not.
yes, we
were not.
We feel very privileged.
Yes.
I didn't find this out till recently, actually, so I don't know if the schools that found out, but I actually didn't even have it for the report. But yeah, we will be given the test in March and April to grade 6 English Language Arts and grade 5 Math. So the reason, I think, the reason those 2 grades were chosen, when we filled out the application, first of all, we have focused technology with those 2 grades. Patty Wagner in the library has some technology there, and Robin Corbeil has some technology in grade 6, and so we'll be able to work that into what the students are already using, and I will report back in the near future on how that goes. But that actually is going to be a really good experience for us and our students, though they may not think so. Few acknowledgments. We had our drama club performance, which I had talked about back in December. Went very well. Thank you to the high school for accommodating us. We had good crowds, and Melissa Mason, Nick Mason did a great job coordinating the production. We had a number of students involved, over 30 kids. It was a nice event. Our band and chorus concert actually happened in December before break. We had a big crowd that night. Carolyn Late, Sarah Evans did a great job preparing the kids and directing that night. And it was a great night and a great concert. And they were back the next day playing again. And we actually had a school concert as part of our, before break, we had a school, we don't do this every year, but the band played for the student body. And as part of that, we sprung a little surprise. The staff had prepared a, what's it called? A flash mob. We were all standing in the gym. We all just started singing. And the 12 Days of Christmas. It was, yeah. It was entertaining. The kids enjoyed it. I think it is actually, Derek. I think it did make a video. Yeah.
It was short-lived. It was up for 2 days.
Yeah.
In a certain location, and then we removed it.
Yeah. Let's see. Math counts. Last year we had a math counts team for the first time, and the math counts team did very well. They competed locally. This year we have a volunteer, Mr. Blow. He's getting the students ready. There's going to be a school competition, and then the students that qualify, there'll be about 5 of them. They'll compete at the local tournament that'll be in February. So I'll hopefully be able to update you on that next month and how they're doing. Thank you to our school community. The Giving Tree this year, our total exceeded $3,000, helped more than 35 students. So thank you to everyone that was involved in that. Today we had our school geography bee, and we had a number of finalists. I actually listed in the report the alternates. I meant to list the other students as well. So we had a number. I'm not going to read them to you, but I can add that later. We had 12 students participate in the final round today. Congratulations to Seth Bonvelour, our champion, and runner-up Trevor Gomes. They both did a great job, and the championship was very tense. And I don't think I mispronounced any of those names, but they were. I can't remember, John, but if I had to pronounce it again, I think I'd probably pass out here because it was about 15 syllables long. Yeah, it's amazing. The kids just they're well prepared. They go into that very well prepared. So actually, they were both in a former B. They had made it as finalists. So a few items of note. We were just talking earlier. The DC trip is coming up quickly. Believe it or not, it is May 13 through 16. Fundraising has kicked off. Our Super Bowl sub fundraiser. I don't think we can call it that. The Super Sub fundraiser has kicked off, and we will be soon fundraising our Krispy Kreme donuts in February. Very healthy snack. Just a quick sports update. Our boys basketball team is actually 3-4. They won yesterday, and the Lady Raiders are 5-2. They both won yesterday. Our Spirit team is beginning competition next month. We had a lockdown drill today. It went very well. We had the police department there to observe and take. They want us to have a full lockdown in effect in less than 3 minutes, which may seem kind of long, like 3 minutes. We should be able to do it less than that. We did it during a lunch period today, which made things even more fun and adventurous. During our 8th grade lunch, nonetheless, if you've been in our CAF. And it went well. And, there's still some little things we're trying to work out with that. We have not done a lot of lockdowns during passing times and that, but each time we do it, we get better. And today actually went well. The police were very pleased at what they saw and the protocols that we're using. Upcoming events, I think I've covered those, and I think that is it for my report.
Excellent. Any questions for Mr. Licklider?
Just, can we get that report sent to us?
Yes.
Since it wasn't on our
If you refresh, it should. If you refresh, it
I went out and refreshed.
It was there.
I'll add
I
those
did it at
names.
7:20 and it wasn't there.
I'll fix it.
I'll add those names,
Yeah.
Michelle.
I may have overlooked it.
Not you,
John's the bad
Michelle.
guy, not
You
me.
did get it to me last, but.
Now that's-
That's unusual, Michelle. Come on, that's unusual.
Principal Rothaus?
So on December 11th, we also, our late arrival day, it is a great benefit for us also. On our late arrival day, we focused on 504s and IEPs. We had an attorney, Jeannie Kincaid, come. She had a great presentation and a lot of suggestions for our staff. In January and February, we will review all 504s. Also, we'll be looking for updated medical documentation. Our Algebra classes are every day, and Algebra 1 class will be having a common assessment, so we'll be able to share that data like we did last year with you. So the kids that meet every day and the kids that take the class every other day will have the same test, and then we'll be able to share information, and hopefully, last year we found out that the kids scored exactly, the same. There was no difference. Freshman seminar this year, we added another twist. Miss Angie, our librarian, is teaching a section on MLA formatting, citations, how to be an effective researcher. So, that's good. Freshman seminar will come to an end at the end of January, but we think that it's been very positive transitioning our freshmen into high school. Our final exams are the 21st through the 24th. A late addition to this report is Skip Hansen from the League of Innovative Schools contacted me this week, and tomorrow at 10:30 they're going to be doing a visitation at Campbell High School. The League of Innovative Schools have written a grant with Bill and Melinda Gates. It's a very large grant, and hopefully if they get that grant, we'll receive some grant money also as being a member. Acknowledgements. Caitlin Heaton is our Special Olympic Youth Committee. She's the co-president. She's going to be working with us on the Penguin Plunge this year. Again, I'm looking for school board members who would like to jump into the ocean with us. It's a lot of fun.
Great way to end your term, Trish.
Trish, you would have so much fun.
No,
So
I would not.
Maybe you might want to
Trust
speak with me
I
after.
would make everybody miserable around me, too.
I did not plagiarize, but we had standing room only too at our concerts. And it was very exciting that our winter concerts was a huge success. So congratulations to our talented music students and Phil and Jill. The Student Council, I know Ryan's going to be talking a little bit about them, but we'd like to thank them for all their efforts with the Giving Tree, raising money for the scholarship. Mr. McDonough does a great job with Student Council. Our first robotics team kicked off on January 2nd, so we had 16 students who just went to the most recent field trip, but we're really looking forward to an exciting season. Every year we get better with robotics. Last time I was here, I talked about Leah Stagnone being nominated and a finalist. Well, the good news is she won, and she's going to be going to Washington, D.C. She's going to receive a $5,000 scholarship. She is yesterday, our staff meeting, we had Ann Douglas. She's a national speaker. She spoke about suicide awareness to our faculty. On March 21st, our CAL group will be going to Life of an Athlete. Life of an Athlete is a national program that also focuses on prevention education when it comes to drugs and alcohol. On the 16th of this month is going to be our art portfolio night. And March 5th, coming up, is going to be our incoming freshman information night. I did invite Jody back because she had information that you requested. I do want to congratulate Tom on the Smarter Balance assessment. We also applied and we did not get chosen. So we're looking forward to finding out more. I don't know, but
Expect some guests.
But congratulations to you. I think we're going to get a trophy tonight, so it's okay that you got that. And let Callahan talk.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if you didn't get my report earlier or ahead of time. I can verbally tell you what we got going on in guidance, and I'm sure that Ryan and Leah will also add in repeat many of the things I'm going to say. Also for handouts I have for you, there's 2 handouts here. The first one, I think Mr. Bork, you specifically had requested at the last board meeting, looking for GPAs for students. So we have the GPAs there are by graduating class from 07 right up until 2016. So our current sophomores. So what's nice about this too is obviously you can see the number of students in each of the grades, as well as the average GPA. In a few grades, we were able to extract what the average SAT score was as well.
Put those
The
on your
nice
notes.
story is the SATs are increasing each year.
pretty
I also today received PSAT electronic scores for our students who took the PSAT back in October. So one of the things that the guidance staff has been doing this week is meeting with students who took the PSATs. We had about 55 sophomores and 58 juniors taking the PSATs this year. Our big push this year is to start encouraging the sophomores to take it in their sophomore year, which research has shown helps the students improve their SAT scores by the time they're taking SATs by the end of their junior year. So we were pretty pleased with the fact that there was a pretty closely even number of sophomores and juniors taking the exam. So rather than hand these students a score sheet, which probably happened to you guys, with a bunch of data on it that they have no idea how to read or what that means in the college world, we've been meeting with students in smaller groups throughout this week, having them log on to the College Board accounts, create College Board accounts if they didn't have them, and then there's a score report that's individualized for each student that tells each student how they can improve their own SAT scores. So it even has a study guide for the students built in. This is one of the very few free services College Board offers. So it's a great resource for the kids. And through these meetings, we're talking to the students about, okay, if you received a 58 in reading, that's really comparable to a 580 in an SAT. And then we compare that to, okay, that's UNH wants a 550. So then we give them some realistic expectations to that. So we're walking them through that, and while we've had their attention in the media lab, we've also had the students logging on to Naviance and using Naviance. The sophomores, we've been focusing them on looking at the career piece that's available to them through Naviance, and the juniors, we're having them focus more on the college search piece for them. So that's been really helpful and productive for the kids this year and sitting with them in the scoring.
Can you show us Naviance sometime? I think we've asked before, but I don't think we ever got to see it. Because you guys talk about it a lot, but I don't think we've ever seen it, or what.
So we could maybe bring that as our,
Dennis probably has.
I've
maybe.
never seen it. I know it exists, and I've heard stories about it, but I've never seen it.
would you like us to do it at a school board meeting? Okay, we could do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like
It's
the
very,
wind.
it's very user
Is it
friendly.
something that
see
we
it,
can
but you
log
know it's
into?
there.
Yep, you
Can
can
you
log
send
in.
us a link and we can, or do we need a
I-
password?
You do need a password. I
Can
can
we set
create.
that, can you create one for the
I-
school board?
I
or-
can create fake students, and you can each take a fake student.
There you go.
I'm gonna be better than you, though, Joe.
Probably, especially in reading, maybe not so in math.
It is a very user-friendly program. When I first started learning about how to use the program for college, my child was in 5th grade at the time and easily logged in. So I always say to the high schoolers, I don't want to hear it. You guys can get in here. It is, right? I mean, you guys use that constantly. So that's been one of the things that we've been working on this week, is making sure individualized reports on the PSAT scores. Ryan's going to talk a little bit more about what we tasked him to do. I talked to Sean McDonough very beginning of the school year and wanted to roll out a presentation for current freshmen on how to actually make this school year count. And I didn't want to hear it from me or another guidance counselor member. In previous districts I worked at, they had a program called Making High School Count, and they had national speakers come in, and it was very upbeat, and they talked to the students about realistically interactive. Stand up, you get the 3.0. Stand up, you get the 3.5. Stand up, you get the 2.0. And realistic, where are you going to school with those types of grade point averages? So obviously, it's about $10,000 or $15,000 for a speaker. So rather than do that, I had permission to take the presentation and adapt it to our school, change it up a little bit, and through Mr. McDonough, he set up for Ryan. Ryan's going to be our main presenter on Friday. So for about a half an hour on Friday, he's going to be jumping around and making kids stand up and figure out what their grade point averages are going to do for them and how you get there. So that's going to be for our current freshmen. Ryan's like, I wish I had this when I was a freshman, because it really would have not somebody talking at you, but shown you just
Freshman year
reality.
counts.
Yep,
Right,
absolutely.
exactly how it counts, and what to expect down the road as well. Lori already talked about midterm schedules. I did show Lori a few hours ago, program of studies has been edited. I did show Lori all of the proposed edits, so now it's in Sherry's hands to then get it to our friends in the SAU to take a look at. So we've gotten that taken care of. I'm in the process of looking at course selection and getting the physical pieces together on all that process, and you guys can all see the timeline that's there. This is a huge time right now, of course, for individual or case issues that may arise with students. There's the panic button is hit for about the next 3 weeks because the end of the semester. So we are working very heavily with individual students and coming up with plans on how they can be successful and maybe what we need to do in semester 2 to make that happen. We're also working on looking at the getting a committee looking at the different diplomas. Diploma with distinction was mentioned in the last school board meeting when I was here. So we'll be working on that more towards end of February. And then the CHHS administration and guidance, along with the Litchfield PD and the Hudson PD. We're going to be putting out a presentation for every member of Litchfield that lives here in the town to attend. It's February 18th at 6:30 in the evening, and it's to educate all of us over the age of 30 about social media and the different sites the kids are using, because there's a lot of sites that I had no idea about. I thought I was fairly savvy. I had a student make a list for me of all the sites that they knew of, and I think I may have enlightened one of the police officers too about a new site. So Hudson PD is going to come in and they're going to talk about sites, how to monitor, you name it. Just, and what kids are posting and maybe what they can do to help with that. So we have a lot going on.
And I just have one more thing. We have one student who's going to be graduating in January from the Londonderry Night School. You'll see that that's a number that consistently decreases the number of kids we're sending to Londonderry, but it does help our graduation rate. So we do have a student who is a Campbell High School student who will be graduating in January from Londonderry Night School.
Oh, you know what, there was one last thing. I do have a financial aid filing night. There's members from the New Hampshire Higher Education Foundation coming here on the 28th of January in the evening to help families actually go through and fill out the FAFSA, which I know a few of you here want to rip your hair out. Dennis wants to over there, I can see.
It's due like 3 days later, though.
In some schools it's due, so that we're pushing, but it goes right in. So some families are just a little panicked, so we have that opportunity for 16 different families, and we're all booked. So 16 families will be coming in.
File estimated. Don't update till April. That's my advice.
As someone who's taught in 3 different universities, it's a challenge. I mean,
I'm done.
It is a very complex, in some ways it's very straightforward, but I think the more you can do to support people with the FAFSA application, the better. I agree with Mr. Miller. If you're not used to interacting online, and if you're not used to what happens in colleges, then it can be
Challenging.
The amazing thing is, so it's targeted at the student. Then it says, will you be entering data for your parents? No, my parents are going to enter the data. It just doesn't make any sense.
No, it
Applying to
doesn't.
college is one of the hardest things I've ever done.
There you go.
There you go.
Did you guys ever make a decision about the weighting for that ELO course?
Yes, we did. After a lot of research, we found out that it wasn't gonna really change anything. It would be like 1/100th of a point. So we decided that we were just gonna let things stand and let the students get the grades they're gonna get. And it's gonna be very close between 1 and 2. It's like, something to watch on school board meetings, because it's this close.
And then going forward, I think there may be 2 students who would qualify to do this class again in the fall, where they have the pre-knowledge and everybody has the same opportunities.
Studies, it'll
Yeah.
be, we've already put it in there, so next year students will be allowed and everyone will have the opportunity.
Any more questions for CHS? All right, I guess you guys are all set.
Curriculum report.
We have to wait for students.
We're at the end. They're at the end.
We should move them on down.
Yeah, we'll let you guys go first. 'cause
Have we done the donation?
Yeah,
Or did we drop the donation?
Oh, yes, there's a donation too for a track
Yeah.
donation, you're right. Donation from Mark Harvey for a boys and girls javelin and a hurdle cart for CHS track and field. Total donation was $708.15. Get a motion to accept the donation? Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 5-0-0. Student report.
Okay, so, first of all, congratulations on us for that, but we have our own trophy to give.
Yeah, we didn't get a trophy this time. They didn't send us.
So, I know in the last couple weeks, we have brought up the Make a Difference food drive quite a bit, but now that all the principals are here to witness this, we have one. So I would like to give this to Ms. Rothaus for all the work that we have done and all the non-perishable items that we have collected through our Make a Difference food drive.
Dennis running the sand
Yes, well, who wins?
I think it should be known as the ramen trophy,
I
because
know.
that's usually what gets you over the top.
Yes, I know, and
We actually-
our kids drive.
Yeah.
So many advantages here.
Some of
We
them
do
work.
have, we can actually
Others
drive to
call
the
their
store
parents.
ourselves.
Yes, they
Exactly.
can. They know where they stand, so they do the last minute push.
I'll put my kids there.
I'll bring the trophy next month, the Smarter Balance trophy.
I'm bringing the volleyball trophy. So there you go.
All right, so next thing on my agenda is, like Ms. Callahan was talking about, our presentation of Making High School Count. I was presented this opportunity very early in the year, and I was immediately full of excitement because I know my freshman year I was a little on the lazy side, and I'm very happy that I was able to turn that around, and now I'm getting better. But yeah, this is a great opportunity to show all the freshmen that freshman year really counts. That taking the right courses, getting their grades up early, especially looking for the future early, and most of all, just understanding that it is okay to change your mind. It is okay to say, I'm going to be a business major since day one. That's what my dad did. That's what my grandfather did. It is okay to have other strays, and it is okay to change your mind. And it's really a great way to start looking for the future for all the young minds to get excited for college and to get excited for their careers in the future. So I'm very excited to be giving this presentation on Friday. Next thing I would like to talk about is before vacation, we had our breakfast at Campbell, which is an annual breakfast for all the teachers and staff that this year the student council was lucky enough to run. We were here very early cooking breakfast, cooking eggs. Mr. McDonough made his famous French toast. We had eggs. I would like to personally thank the kitchen staff for letting us use their kitchen. They were very good with us. They let us work around them. They were helping out with us a lot. this was a great thing for us to really show our appreciation to the teachers and staff, and I was very happy to be a part of that also. Next thing is tomorrow we have some alumni coming back to the school, talking about life after high school, because believe it or not, there is for us. But I'm also very excited to be attending that meeting. I'm very excited for my upcoming years going into college and looking for a career, so I really need to hear what others have to say about it. And that's all I have. I'll pass it over to Leah.
Do all the seniors get to attend that, or is it just
It
some?
is.
It's open to both seniors
open.
and juniors. I've kind of left a little more open than in past years, only because of the snow days and crunch on having 7 days left before midterm. So I did open it up to all juniors and seniors with permission from their teacher. So.
Because it's during the school day.
Yeah, it's at 1 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay, I'll talk about tree lighting. That's, we've been doing that for a long time. This year we had a few changes to make, made the day a little bit more festive. We started out with the breakfast at Campbell, like Ryan said, so that really got the day off to a good start. The whole student council was here at 6 a.m. wearing Santa hats and cooking breakfast, so that really got a good start to the day. We did our typical, the chorus and band performed. This year they performed together at the same time and we sang along. So that was really fun. The auditorium looked awesome. And this year Mr. Prez got up and read 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, which with the band playing in between and interrupting him, and it was actually pretty funny.
Very funny.
It was good. So that was a good ceremony. All the money that we raise from selling lights on the tree to people to honor and remember loved ones goes to a scholarship fund. So it's for a good cause too, and it was nice right before the break. And one more thing that hasn't been mentioned yet is the New Hampshire Scholars before break. I think it was a Friday before break, right? Or Thursday, whatever the day was before break.
Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah. The New Hampshire Scholars had a presenter. It's actually my dad, and and he came in to present about his career as a chiropractor and having more in general having a career in the medical field and studying science in college. So yeah, I think that's all we have. Yes.
Any questions for the student reps? So, well, thank you very much for coming, your presentation. Feel free to stay if you'd like, but if you need to scoot out.
I think we gotta head out. Homework.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
It's really heavy.
Curriculum.
Nice job.
Did you see the music books I dropped off? This is about. It's highly designed, the covers. You can go down and see them. I dropped them off today, this morning.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'll stop it. Thank you. That's great.
If we could start with the park recommendations, and if you see fit with each one, we can have a discussion and a motion, unless you would like to table them to the subsequent meeting. The first one is to add this novel to the selected text for that grade level. We have a lot of shorter text, and this would be one of the longer texts for that grade level. And the recommendation from PERC is to approve that text be used in 4th grade.
What's that about? Out of my mind?
It's a student who has disabilities and how other students treat that student and interact with the student. Title is a little misleading.
Yeah, which I'd never heard before.
And it is spelled with all lowercase letters. You know how these authors are, very quirky. This one was recommended by the reading specialist to the grade 14, so they in agreement that they would like to read this book, and she's used it, piloted it with individual students before, and so now she's recommending it for small groups, larger groups of students.
And the Lexile level of this one was appropriate for that grade, or was that a little low, but
It's
we
on the
just-
low
It's on the
end.
low side, that's what I thought. But because of the content of it, we
And
decided
it's
that it
balanced
was-
with some other higher level text.
Yeah.
Your motion?
Make a motion to accept the book Out of My Mind for the grade 4 curriculum.
Have a second? I'll second.
Oh, I thought you were seconding before.
Oh, you do?
So you felt, Trish, through the conversation, it was a good book, Pat? Because this would have been something that came out of PERC, right?
Yes, yes. It was, again, well, some of my concern is that a lot of times we're looking at Lexile scores that are lower than the grade level that we would normally want. This particular one, because it was discussing, what's the word, handicaps and what disabilities and what they go through, it was relevant for that grade to have that experience through that person's eyes.
The other thing is, it's very difficult until authors sort of get up to speed on the recommended readabilities for each of the grade levels now. Until they start writing appropriately, what you'll find is that the books at the higher readability are often not topics that are appropriate for fourth graders. They would be middle school or even low high school in terms of readability, but that's not necessarily content that you want the kids reading. As you know, in young adult literature, if you have any kids in your house, that often authors are putting in what I would call sensitive materials to get kids' attention, but it's not necessary, and they might read it on their own with or without permission, but it's not necessarily something that we want to read in the classroom. So in PERC, we spent quite a bit of time, and I think I had showed that here at one point, that the triangle of considerations, the three aspects that we consider with any text to be used here in school for small or large groups, and that is not only the quantitative readability, the quality of the content of the text, and then the reader developmental level and the task that you hope to accomplish. So if you were, in this case, trying to address the issue of social acceptance and that kind of thing, then that would lend itself to that particular topic.
Develop the sensitivity to that person's.
A lot of the anthology material has to do with animals and some fantasy, so getting some realistic fiction is really important.
And this was also one that a lot of times when they had low Lexiles, we wanted the teacher to, we wanted you to bring it back to the teacher and have them justify it more.
Okay.
This was not one that happened to, I believe, right, Julie?
Well, only to the extent that in each case we had at least two other books to consider. And in this, these are all the recommendations that we bring to you are the higher quality ones. Let's put it that way.
So, and I'm going to ask this question on all of these,
Mhm.
okay? So, when you were here in our meeting in December, I asked the question of how do these things pertain to the Common Core and stuff? And you made a comment that, and I'm summarizing, or paraphrasing, I didn't, correct me if I'm wrong, but that we had to first get our curriculum to Common Core levels. That our
When we were discussing, should it be more rigorous?
Correct.
That really wasn't in context of choosing these materials. It was more in terms of the curriculum expectations, the skills and knowledge that are in the actual curriculum. In this particular case, it's more an issue of what's available for students to read and analyze and use practice analyzing with literary techniques. You know, what theme, and setting, and plot, and that kind of thing.
So as PERC's going through this process, are they also looking at these books in a way to see if they're rigorous enough for the students, other than it being appropriate enough, but rigorous enough at the same time, because we want to increase the rigor for the students and
Given what's
given
available
what's available and stuff.
that would be appropriate for a fourth grader.
It's probably always coming up every time we look at it, especially when we do see that it's a lower Lexile.
Okay.
So we always bring that up. Sometimes we're kind of stuck, you know, that this is about all that we have to offer the students in that content area. But, you know, other times we do send it back and say, get a better book than this.
Better book.
There is still a requirement to offer a range of reading levels, because of course, even, you know, within the regular track, you're probably looking at students who can be 1 to 2 grade levels above and below. So trying to find that balance, but in general, there has been.
I mean, we should always be pushing,
Yeah.
While I understand we need to have books in a sense, but, you know, my feeling is you try to want to make fourth graders read fifth grade books, while at the same time, hopefully the material is not,
Well,
it's age, I mean, you know, it's tough to have age-appropriate materials in fourth, fifth grade, I
there's
understand
no,
that.
a real issue is that there's no such thing as a fifth grade book. What makes a book what it is a variety of characteristics, and these 3 characteristics that not only has been set forth in the Common Core literature, but have been pretty common probably several decades in terms of readability. It's not, I mean, you can have a story or a piece of text that is very difficult to decode in terms of its readability. It has big, long words, and it has many syllables per sentence and many sentences per paragraph. Those are the common things that make up readability. And yet the content can be very simplistic. I can write about Dick and Jane and, you know, have sentences that are this long. So it's a combination of that word structure with the content and what you're going to do with it. And also keep in mind that we're just talking about group text here. That is either a group of probably 4, 5, 6 students and different groups are reading different books, or it could be a whole class. Whereas it is pretty common that when you want children to be challenged in their own reading, they pick their individual books. And the draft of the curriculum, they haven't brought to you yet, but made some pieces available until I can do that, is that individual reading is required in our new curriculum. Whereas before it was sort of, I won't say optional, but it was done at the teacher's discretion. Whereas now it has to be a common piece of what the students are doing. And that's really where a child will say, well, I want to read this book, and the teacher will provide guidance that that book may not be an adequate challenge or perhaps too challenging for a student at a given time. Over time, what we'd like to do, and the NWEA testing provides this, is that the students will know what their current Lexile level is and can learn to choose books in their Lexile range. Because they and parents and some of you would have gotten a letter at the end of each year with the MAP scores, and at the last paragraph explains what a Lexile level is, and that you can go to Lexile.com and look up many thousands of books that have already been measured and find out what that Lexile level is and try to match it with your child's Lexile level. You can even do it by interest. So if your child is interested in animals and they read at a 700 Lexile level, a list of titles will come up and say this one's about tigers and this one, you know,
Okay.
whatever. So there's a lot of different ways to challenge children in it. It's not always about what students will read in groups.
The other thing is that over the last decade or so, we've become better at researching the differences between good readers and not so good readers. And if you've ever experienced the phenomena of reading a paragraph and then going, I've read all the words, but I have no clue what I just read, that notion of tense density rather, and how much comprehension has to go beyond. Research indicates that basically good readers vary the speed at which they're reading to the complexity of the ideas that they have to get their head around. And that's not the case with poorer readers. They will go through the decoding process and read it either out aloud or to themselves and get to the end and say, I've read it, but not have the notion that they should be slowing down because it's a denser read. So, and trying to get students to become better readers and be more aware of those sorts of things is one of the major things that's really changed in the last few years.
So I'm confused by the text complexity chart at the bottom of this,
The bottom of what
of
is-
the form that was filled out for the novel.
Yes.
There's X's, which says it's not suited to the band across all the band entries, although they entered notes and comments.
The band is the measurement, the numerical measurement for that grade span. I'll have to open that document, sorry. I think it's 700 Luxile, is that correct, for this
Yep.
particular text? And the band starts at about 750, and it's about a plus or minus 50, so it's at the low end of that grade level.
Well, these are all dead in the center of the band.
That's the qualitative things. The arrow represents how well do those qualitative questions, I'm opening it as we
Okay.
speak.
So then,
So in other words, story structure, that's a qualitative aspect, that's not a number. So how well is the structure of that text formatted for grade 4 students? And the teacher is saying it's right on, it's in the middle, it's not too easy and it's not too hard. Structure meaning chapters, chapters aren't too long, they're not too short. They're organized in a way that the student can follow the story. It has a beginning, middle, and end, which you're always looking for. It has a climax or a conclusion, that kind of thing. So those are the structure pieces. The language, clarity, and conventions, again. Vocabulary, the language, it doesn't use too much technical vocabulary. So in other words, if this is about disabilities, they're not using overly highly technical words that would describe the disability. And yet, the language is appropriate to convey what the author is trying to convey.
so I guess, rather than go through them all, if
Yeah.
they're all dead in the center, all the ratings above that were rated were excellent. So I'm trying to understand how the appropriateness is excellent at the top, but at the bottom, it's the middle of the band. If that's truly what we're trying to rate, I would think that the bottom chart would somehow have correlation to the ratings we're doing at the top, albeit presented in a different way.
Not really. And the reason is because the excellence in all of those is how well suited is it for a group of mixed ability students, whereas this is saying, and I want to be politically correct here to our staff, but I think that if the X was at the far left, then that would say it's not well suited to these students. So whether really it's a millimeter one way or the other, or at the upper end, it really doesn't say how highly suited is it. It's more, is this appropriate for most fourth graders? They're two different tools. One is provided to us through the Common Core. The other one was written by humans here in the district. And they ask different questions.
So at any point in time through this process, do the students read the book and give feedback before even, I mean, or is this book not even given to the kids to read until it gets approved?
It should not be given, and your mandate is that it's not given to groups of students, meaning small or large groups, until it's adopted. What I mentioned was that the reading specialist has used this with individual students, groups of students that she works with and felt it was highly appropriate for students in the fourth grade. Other fourth grade teachers looked at it and felt it would be highly appropriate for her teachers. Can I guarantee you, and I'm not saying that you asked this, but it's a reasonable thing to think, that out of the literally millions of books that are read that fall in whatever range for any age or grade level, that we've looked at all of them? That's not possible. But amongst, for instance, your 5 fourth grade teachers and a reading specialist, 5 people who are always reading children's literature, taking courses, which I know some, if not all of them, have. You know, they're trying to keep up with the literature that's out there and what's available. And sometimes you don't always know how a piece of literature is going to, and I'll use the term work, meaning encompassing discussion and whether the kids will engage with the text, if they're supposed to read some of it on their own or silently. You know, there's no guarantee on some of these things that you can't measure until you actually use it a few times. Often they've also, and it's not indicated on that form, but maybe they know a little colleague in another district that's used the book and so forth. I think the information that I take away from this mostly is that our reading specialist has used it with some individual students, and the students, number one, have wanted to keep reading the book. I think she makes a comment that kids were reading even when they didn't have to be. It wasn't reading time and they didn't have to be reading. They were reading during their free time, and that they spent a lot of time and passion discussing the story. Those features are what you would want kids to be doing with text, engaging with the text in a variety of ways that says that they're not only getting the words off the page, as Dr. Cochran mentioned, but they're actually giving some thought to what they're reading. And obviously, as they get older and older, that's what they have to do. They have to process the text and have it make sense for them. You know, I think it's, if I may just comment, that in the past, in general, we may have seen a book on a list and given it a try, or if it was on sale, it was lower cost, we might buy it for the class or whatever. You know, these days we really are giving much more thought. That doesn't mean that we're not fallible, but we are trying to give a lot more thought. We've tabled, Trish can tell you, we've tabled several titles because we all wanted to read the books. I've read some, maybe kind of divvied up some of them. Questioned whether some of them are appropriate, gone back to them. Some we've changed, then seen that it would be appropriate, and some we've asked the teachers to go back and look at some other choices. So at least you would know what process that we're trying to use.
Any more discussion before vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 5-0-0.
Thank you. The next item is about a 20-minute film. In the past, a previous film had been used, so this is a replacement, if you will. And this film that we watched dealt with the various topics having to do with pre-adolescent emotions, feelings, and the reproductive system in a very tasteful, sensitive way, and yet seemed to be appropriate for, I forgot to write it on here, but I think it was grade 6 as we looked at it. And if Tom were here, the nice thing is that we have one administrator from each building that typically comes when there's something for their grade level. So Tom also had seen the film and felt that it was more updated. Some of the films after a while get a little antiquated. The kids notice that the haircuts and the clothing doesn't quite jive with what they were.
When I was in school, they were like from the 60s. They were
Right.
horrible.
And so we're always trying to keep it updated and yet still get the topics.
They're more laughing at the
Plaid pants
at the
and-
plaid pants and the
Exactly.
outfits, and they don't get the message.
Right, that's exactly right.
Motion.
Well, I'll just say that I did not I think I abstained from this, actually, because I'm of the opinion that this belongs in the home being discussed. However, you know, in discussion at the meeting, they had talked about how the students had an opt-in rather than an opt-out option for the parents, so.
So I guess what's being discussed that you didn't like?
My personal feeling is that this is a family discussion, not a school discussion.
I will say it does align with the curriculum, the adopted. Health is one of the adopted areas.
Make a motion to accept it.
A second.
Any more discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And I'll abstain.
Abstain? Motion carries 4-0-1.
The last resource is a advanced placement Spanish workbook. It's not uncommon that in an advanced placement course, the students are seeing questions that they has them review the
I may
material.
have one question on this one.
Yes.
I'd like to know how the PERC class and PERC people analyze this. Were they all well
The
diverse in
Spanish
the
teacher-
Spanish?
The Spanish
She
teacher
was
is
very
actually
excited about
on
it.
the committee, and she could have sold us the bill of goods because French and Latin are my
She could have
languages.
just been speaking.
Good
No.
question. This is one of three, College Board, which monitors advanced placement, makes recommendations about what are acceptable texts of any kind that you can choose from in order to use AP as the title on kids' transcripts and offer the course under their name. And this was one of them, and it's the one that the teacher feels most comfortable with. And she apparently showed a sample copy to the students, and they were felt that that would be good for them.
So there's a pending resignation. There's a pending resignation.
Whoever teaches the course should use this.
Well, if we I'm just trying to look ahead, and if you have a new person comes in that wants different materials.
Not till next year.
Well, we've
I
already
would say
invested
not
in this,
for
though.
several years, if that's the
Yeah,
case.
we've already
If we're gonna
invested in
invest
this.
in it, that's
Well,
why I'm asking, does it have to be done
Yeah,
this year?
should we hold it?
No, because these students have to take the test in May. And number one,
It's a
she's pretty
$600
sure, and
investment.
it would be unusual if students would not purchase this themselves because you want to write in it. You don't want to have to copy the answers on pieces of paper. And if you are taking, and this is I've alluded to this before, but at some point, I need to have a better entree for this discussion about at what point should students be encouraged to purchase some of their own materials, because students who are taking AP, in many cases, they're taking it so they can have a jump start on that course path. Now, sometimes they just want to accumulate AP credits and that kind of thing, and that's understandable. But if you're taking Calculus AB, you're probably going to take BC. And if you're taking Spanish at this level, you probably are going to take the next level, which this is college level 1 Spanish, and then you would take level 2. And so they would want to keep some of these materials because it helps them with the next level of course.
One of the reasons we go through this process is basically so it's not idiosyncratic to a teacher. And I would not expect that the school would come around next year and say, well, the other teacher liked this stuff, but now I want the district to buy X.
Unless,
That really is one of the major goals.
unless we didn't buy any with school funds and the kids bought them all themselves, then we would, have a clean slate and be able to do that.
But I would take the purchase of this book to be a commitment to get significant use out of the tech materials.
Make a motion. Accept it.
Second.
Any more discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries 5-0-0.
So before we continue, the last time we talked about this, we talked about aligning these forms with the policy. Are we making any progress on that?
We got an oil delivery tonight, but on that, no, we've not gotten to. But thank you for the reminder.
Aligning the
Michelle,
form,
if she
I
can-
mentioned that we wouldn't be able to do it at today's meeting, that we would.
Oh, I
do
just
it-
asked if we were making progress. I didn't think we would be done.
Yeah, not yet. We would begin addressing it at next month's meeting. So the last item for potential action is the math curriculum framework. What is your pleasure?
I gotta tell you, there's a lot of reading in there. And I spent, you know, a few hours reading through. I mean, I guess I don't understand why we're not. To me, I was drilled it was 12. So you had to know your 1 through 12. You had to know 12 times 12 was 144. Everything that went down to 0, you had to know that. And as I was reading through this in the early stages of, and I was really just concentrating on the first 4, 5 grades, because my feeling was the other ones are, you know, the other ones are there, but that's where the foundation block, and you know, I don't know if it's as rigorous as it needs to be to get to Common Core standards, I guess is my, and I don't know how to reconcile that in my mind of whether or not it's rigorous enough to move the curriculum. See, this is a commitment to our math curriculum that we won't address for, I believe, another 5 years, I think is the cycle. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. Not
But
necessarily.
yeah, that's true, but I mean, we have a process, because we approve a curriculum, and then with that approval of curriculum, we know that then there's gonna be purchase of books that are programs or whatever that's going to occur with that. And that, so we're making a commitment. Now, granted, we can always undo that, and in that process, and I know, Julie, you probably worked on this, and the math people probably put a lot of this together. But I guess the question I have, Dr. Cochran, is this as rigorous as a math program can be based on the math scores that we have in our schools? Will this begin to will this begin to fix the problem in the high school with the math scores? Now, I understand the students that are going to fix that are right now in middle school and elementary school, but this is truly a foundation here.
There's 2 issues. One is the trajectory of the curriculum to the end of the Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2 sequence appropriate? Then the other piece, which Jason has actually brought up before, is because that's really where Common Core stops, because in theory or college and career ready. We have a whole series of courses after that. So is that also the level of rigor that it should? Those are aligned with the Common Core standards, and based on the cursory read that I did with today, they certainly appear to be. Then we should be in good shape. Now, the other problem is rigor has to be, if you think of student growth, and this is the point I was trying to make earlier, you think of student growth for a student in a grade level at a given point, may be at grade level, above grade level, or below level. Rigorous to them, very rigorous in promoting catch-up growth, maybe something at grade level because they're half a grade level behind. So this should address students at that level and at an appropriate trajectory to get us there. But, yeah, let me just leave it at that. When I went through it, I looked at that format. I'm more concerned about the general direction that we're going, in the sense that if you looked at curriculum guides, I looked up both the Nova Scotia 2005 math guide and the old, the 2005 Massachusetts guide. And they're becoming more and more descriptive of standards and less about this is what quality instruction looks like. So I'm pretty comfortable with the trajectory, but my concern is, and not just us, but globally, curriculum guides are getting shorter because there's just not that much conversation more, because there's an assumption that you're going to buy a program. And so the conversations about good teaching can become default conversations about a textbook, especially since you pay a lot of money for the textbook. So that's my biggest concern about the document.
It's basically just a checklist of objectives. So how do we, I guess, how do we change that?
And I would explain that that's not the intent. This is not a full-blown curriculum. Purposely call it a curriculum framework, because a curriculum includes instructional units. Number one, we haven't had time to create those. They are very time-consuming, and they need to be created including the teachers who are experts at those grade levels. That means release time, it means stipend money, it means trying to convince people to come in the summer and work on those. Right now, even in the past, they've been trying to plan and create those units of study while they're trying to teach kids, while they're trying to grade papers. And so this provides a more comprehensive list, if we want to call it a list. It is a list. What you teach kids, the what, is always a list, but it's a much more in-depth list. It's what you would refer to as unpacking the standards. There are 10 math standards, more or less, for each grade level. There are more than 10 things in each of these because we spent a year and a half unpacking all the skills. And we had some resources that we used, and we even got more detailed than that. We brought it back to grade levels and said, does this make sense to you? When you read this 6 months from now, will you know what you're supposed to be expecting from students? What it doesn't include is the instruction. And when Mr. York asks the question, is this going to solve our problem? The real problem is solved through instruction. And it wasn't a mistake that before I've written and quoted that teachers are the most important resource when it comes to student learning. And we have excellent teachers. We have to give them more time together and with administrators and with other professional learning opportunities to improve their practice. And my major issue is that there is not enough time.
So back to the original question, is this good for what it is? Yes, but it's only a piece of the puzzle. You can tell we've had this conversation before. Her response was pretty quick, wasn't it?
No, I think both of you guys are probably spot on, and probably both coming from two different directions that aren't opposite, but and probably on the same page in that process.
There are highly structured places like Nova Scotia, which has many, many towns in what they consider one district. You know, we have 3 schools, one at each level.
Yeah.
Massachusetts, which has invested millions and millions and pays tons of people like me and a lot smarter than I am that sit and write these things. So if we didn't want to use Common Core as a guide, and then put our best judgment in our unpacking and our analysis with it, we could spend millions of dollars and bring people in and perhaps write,
I'm not saying that you need to do that, but my thought process on there is that there has to be some this isn't, this country is driven by people developing, spending the time to develop a curriculum in great detail that may follow exactly what you have here, that's already developed the curriculum, and say, okay, this is what we would recommend, boom, boom, boom. And I'm not, because I agree. We only have 125 teachers. Or I think that's the right number, or whatever. It's not. It's close enough. And they got a lot of students, and they're teaching and grading and doing a great job. And I understand the tax that Manchester. Bless them. They think they have 1,500 teachers and they can write a whole brand-new curriculum. That's a whole nother discussion on itself, however, with the other issues that are going up there. But that's what they're going to try to do. I don't know if that's the equation we want to start, but there has to be a way to try to to pass this and say this is good to go, and then say, okay, when does the curriculum come that supports? Here are the books. Here's how we're going to teach it. I guess my question would, we had Dr. Sharma in here for the last couple of years. My question would be, what is his thoughts on what this? What is his thoughts on this?
Thinks it's quite good. A lot of what's in there are his words his work. And that's because his work coincides with the standards that went into this. That's not an accident. Now, do we want more students taking algebra in 8th grade? This will help with that. Do we eventually perhaps want more students starting algebra in 7th grade and either taking 2 years to do algebra in 7th and 8th grade or taking a whole course in 7th grade? Perhaps we do. But it's also about taking steps.
No.
The old curriculum that was adopted in 2010 was only 2.5 years old. That was May of 2010. This was finished last May. By the time I put it all together, you just got it in November. So that was a pretty substantial turnaround in a relatively short period of time. Before that, our curriculum was copied out of the New Hampshire state frameworks, the GLEs. Every line was copied out of there. And that became our curriculum because the state said, this is our framework, this is what you will teach.
So what happens next? So say looking at the 3rd grade level, it has all these objectives. Does the 3rd grade team get together with you and maybe some other specialists and say, okay, for math, this is the textbook we're going to use and this is the process we're going to follow so that each teacher's doing basically the exact same thing? Or do they kind of go on their own? Or
in math, the units, and I don't like to say this normally, but the instructional unit development is often guided by your resources, because unlike English language arts where you can take this poem and this play out of any place in the book, which is why we haven't pushed to buy new expensive books at this point. We're buying more individual pieces of text. And the envisions that we now have, which were a complementary replacement for the pilot that was done here in the district in 2008, is aligned with the Common Core. The teachers have looked at it, I've looked at it, the units align with what is here that Professor Sharma looked at as well. The key is, and I think Trish, you alluded to this in one of my reports late last spring when I laid out what were the key knowledge and skills for each grade level. In fact, now they appear on the front page that says which grade, and they're bulleted. Those are the key things. Maybe they're categories if you want to look at them that way. Everything that follows in the next 4 to 8 pages, depending on the grade level, supports supports those bullet points under the grade level. The fact, and to go back to the question of will our students get stronger? If we focus on our instruction, they will. Because who will argue that the students should have automaticity with their math facts? That no child should leave 1st grade without knowing all of their addition facts to 10, or in 2nd grade their subtraction facts to 10, and multiplication in 3rd grade, and division in 4th grade, and henceforth no child should leave that grade except for very few students that have other difficulties should know their math facts. That will mean that their working memory doesn't work on the focus on the math facts. They can focus on the other topics in mathematics.
So thank you. That was a great explanation there. So then how do we make sure that every student is proficient? Where is our benchmark?
We've actually made some good strides in
process?
that. The work that Dr. Heon has done in the last year and a half about identifying what are those deliverables by grade level as we move up. One of the things that's on the docket for all school districts is writing K-8 competencies. And we're actually in a good place in that. This is the first year of implementation, quite honestly. Part of this is a conversation that I'm going to bring back to the board in another couple of months, because it really is a capacity issue. Nashua, we have the same task as a district as Nashua has and Manchester has. They might have 4 or 5 curriculum people. We have 0.8. And so one of the issues is me trying to find ways to take things away from Julie and have other people do them, to focus her time more on the things that only she can do. Right now she does grants administration, she does that piece, and she does it well. But when you only have 0.8 of a person, you have 5 different curricula in a 7-year cycle, not to mention unified arts, it's a lot to do. Nashua and Manchester are struggling just to maintain it with 5 times as many curriculum people. So that's the big challenge, and quite honestly, it's something that we've had some significant conversations with, and even as recent as yesterday.
And perhaps it would be helpful, Patricia wasn't able to join us today, but we spent our entire program an hour and a half, and the question I posed to the committee was, how can we take our curriculum review, evaluation and review cycle, and actually give it legs? Right now, basically, we have picked and chosen which curriculum areas to adopt. There are 8, the way it's divided out, 10, sorry, because we culled out some of the unified arts, so they would each have a place in the cycle. But basically, we revise curriculum when something comes along that, like Common Core Math and English Language Arts, like the Next Generation Science Standards that were released last year that we should look at, by national subject area organizations or other research. And when the other consideration is when we think we want to buy something, or something's either been outdated, or the teachers will say, this isn't working, kids aren't learning from this, there aren't enough math problems, or the text isn't appropriate, or whatever. And it's not uncommon, it's not unique to Litchfield, but the constant monitoring, review, and everything that would fall under the umbrella of evaluation outside of those other 2 functions rarely happens, because it's not on the forefront. Every year, each subject area, which you could refer to as a program, like our math program, our language arts program, should be reporting to the board. You know how you've asked what's going on in these subjects? Every year, their report to you would have a different focus. So one year, it would be about, this year, for instance, how would the implementation of the new curriculum, the draft curriculum, how is it going? Are kids responding? What are the challenges? We know the challenges are, in many cases, except for probably kindergarten, the kids aren't ready for some of those topics because we're entering them in a curriculum where they haven't had all of the year before. So that would be a response. The next year, you'd have a report based on, now we have a year behind us. We're looking at this particular element. Let's analyze and report. So analysis of what's happening, how the instruction is going, how the kids are responding to it. We talked about creating tools that will help the teachers do that analysis, guiding questions, a rubric, a checklist, whatever it is, so that every year, that depending on what phase of the 5-year cycle they're in, they would have a little bit different focus, but it would all come back to this idea of assessing or analyzing how that curriculum is working for not only the instructors, but also for the kids. And that's a piece that I observe that's been missing. And it's a very time-consuming piece for everyone, because if you choose to highly structure it, then you would have somebody from every grade, at least one teacher, K to 12, meeting regularly throughout the school year. Well, I think most of us wouldn't want teachers out of the classroom that much, especially elementary teachers that teach at least 4 of the most, the academic subjects, as well as specialists who might be the only music teacher or the only art teacher or whatever in their building. So we spent an hour and a half talking about, is this something we want to do? How do we do it? And isn't it important? And everything that we've talked about tonight is about that. It's about creating a system, a more highly developed system that gives all of us tools that allow us to efficiently but fairly thoroughly think about how is this working for kids in each program.
So, does the curriculum department need more hours?
Well, no question. No question.
Because I understand Julie's at 30. So does it need 24 more hours? Does it need 30 more hours? Does it need, something where we should go to the voters and say, this is where we're at, this is the issues, we need
Right now,
we
the
need more hours.
conversations are about how do we get some efficiencies elsewhere within the SAU office to try and take some tasks away from Julie in order to have her use her time here. So there's a couple of issues associated with that. One is that if you talk about either a curriculum or a resource that you're using, and you had three that you like, and one's a little bit better than this one and that one, the one you pick really isn't nearly as important as how deeply and thoroughly you implement it with fidelity, and then you assess it to make sure you're doing it. If you took the three that you said, these are any of these three, any minimal differences between those are so far overshadowed by the fidelity and the quality of the implementation, it isn't funny. And that is, and when Julie says we're not doing it, virtually no one's doing it, quite honestly. This is the big downfall. So you put a curriculum in and you buy a resource, and 5 or 6 years later, you're not getting the growth that you want, and you say, well, that's not working. Well, what do we mean? Normally, I would say, I don't know, Julie, you can disagree if you want. I'm saying it conservatively, 2/3 to 3/4 of the time, failure of a program to achieve its goals is almost completely related to how well it was implemented, the fidelity, the amount of professional development. You don't need to jump at every new fad that comes along if you do a good all-in implementation and stick with it, so that in year one you're doing something that has a lot of fidelity, and you're monitoring what's working well and what's not. And you need to work with teachers over time so they're able to understand and assess as they go through. And also, okay, so where do we have to augment? Where do we have to take away? And over a 3 to 5 to 6 to 7 year program, you get that continuous improvement piece.
So
But it needs to be facilitated.
How are we going to be assured that we'll be able to keep on top of that, so that if we are kind of failing in some area, that we can tweak that? And
Quite honestly, with the resources that we have, the best that we can do is work on those areas that are most important to improve and put our resources there.
So
right
my
now-
question
right
on
now,
this,
that's math.
I mean, is this something that falls on the shoulders of the principals? Or in their schools, where, yes, they do have to come, and it's, I love their reports, don't get me wrong, I love all that information, but I would rather them come and tell me, this is what's working in 5th grade math, since you've improved, and this is what's working in 6th grade math, this is what's working in language arts, or science, or history. I can read through that process, we can post it on the front page of our website. But I would much rather hear how the curriculum is improving the education process, exactly how you explained it. Because I think that's more important, because we need to be able to support, if something's not working, and nobody tells us,
Right.
we can't help fix it. Whatever that help fix it means.
No question.
It inevitably comes to us in, wow, our scores went down, and normally what that says is, well, it's just this class, we'll have to wait another year. But you understand, another year means another 250 kids moved out of the schools.
So last year, we developed those end-of-year targets for K through whatever in math. And this year, we should be measuring them. And then we use that measure to say, well, what's working and what's not, and what changes are we going to make during the year and at the end of the year. you can't spend your time measuring everything.
No, I understand.
But we have to, I mean.
It's a new software package we bought where
So
we're
the-
measuring monthly.
So the steps that we've taken are pretty well aligned with that. But quite honestly, education has one of the worst records of successful implementations of programs. I mean,
It's not what we want to hear.
well, I mean, we do. We tend to try to do too much at once and not do it well enough and not fund it enough. And we do have a capacity issue. I would not be honest with you if I said we didn't. But the question becomes, how do you, given the resources that we have, what would we have to give up to get more of that capacity? Because
And
the dollars are
that
fairly
is,
finite.
and those are the conversations that the three principals need to come and have with us. Because nothing against the two of you, because you guys are great people. However, you're not in the front line, and I understand the people in the front line are the teachers. But the principals are right there. They had a staff meeting. I cannot believe, like in any other staff meeting, people don't tell, if something's not right, I can't believe that a teacher doesn't, or anybody doesn't share
Remember
something.
what I said a few minutes ago about needing to create the tools that will help all of us assess, evaluate whether or not it's working. Okay?
Correct.
So we can charge the administrators and the teachers, but we have to give them tools. So one of the things that I'm hoping that we'll do is over next summer, we'll put groups of people together to create those tools. Some of them we'll borrow from the research. We won't have to recreate the wheel. But we have to, you know, I just said to myself, this is something we need to do. Presented it to the committee. I'm letting you know about it, that we need to take these steps if in fact that's what we want to address. But we can't expect just the administrators to do that because they have lots of other things to do, plus they don't have the tools until we give them to them. And secondly, even more importantly, is the fact that the teachers need time. Analysis takes, you probably all do it in your line of work. It takes time. You have to collect data and resources of all kinds. You need to know what to collect, what it looks like, and it takes time to put that together. It just doesn't appear. Even though we have AimsWeb, you have to do the printouts. You have to put the data in the computer system and then get the printouts. Then you have to sit with yourself alone and then with others and collaborate and put your heads together and say, is this what we should be expecting from these students? You look at each student's name and you say, what is their capacity? Are they working to their potential? I mean, we're talking about evolutions that require considerable more time than we have with our teachers in 5 or 6 workshop days and 2
So-
grade late arrival days at the other schools and 4 up here, and at the same time trying to get them to do how many other things?
So,
Well-
go ahead, Des.
I don't think we're gonna solve that problem tonight.
No, I was just answering.
No, I understand, and
Yes, it's late.
No.
the,
But I've
Well, my
given you
question,
food for
no,
thought,
but my
right?
question is, my question not to solve that problem, but my question is, you know, what is the next step for us? I mean, do we say, okay, in February or March, you need to come back, okay, now that you've
Need a plan.
put the carrot in front of us that says, okay, this is what we want, and I'm okay with that, but how do we get there? I mean, how, and can we make that decision in a timely enough fashion? And you know, I understand resources, and I understand that they're an issue, but at the same time, you know, we're in the budget process, we can't make any changes there, but we need to have an idea. If you're gonna do this in the summer, we need to have an idea of what the costs would be, and what you're looking to do, so that, you know, after March, if you need to juggle around the budget or whatever to do what you need to do, then that's what you have to do. So I guess the question I have is, if you get an approval on the plan today that is a draft, what's the next step to make sure that the things that you just talked about are available and the plan to occur. I mean, if it's gonna take till a year from now, well, that's gonna defeat the process, because we're gonna have gone through another budget process, and if you needed funds for it, we're not gonna have the funds for it, so it's 2 years out. Well, again, I keep going back to the thing. If we're going to start the process, we need to understand it, and we need to understand what resources are necessary. And I don't know what those resources are, because this is a little bit above my pay grade. But we need to be able to, as a board, sign off on it and say, okay. And then at the same time, it sets a platform for the expectations for next year when you bring us language arts, science, or for anybody in the future to bring this. This is the expectations. I mean, this is great, but the plan that says, when you approve this, this is the plan. We're going to approve one, maybe we don't tonight, but we may approve one, not knowing the consequences of saying this is the plan, yet we want you to do this, and then you come back and say, well, the cost is, X times Y, using a math thing.
We're actually talking about two different things, okay? The cost of implementing that curriculum framework at this moment is zero.
Okay.
Because even without new resources, we should do this.
Okay.
Because they're researched that these skills should be able to be accomplished by students in those grade levels. There's no way to know for sure if all of our kids can exceed those. When we compare to other countries and so forth, you're talking about systems that are selective, that eliminate kids that have other issues, that aren't your high achievers.
I want
They have
every
parents
student
that are doing
their senior year taking AP calculus. Now I understand
Well, then
that.
you need to
No,
go
I
home with, they
understand-
have to come home with you.
I understand
so
that's not a reasonable
you ensure that they
expectation.
do their work and that they learn what they're supposed to learn.
Ideally, that would ultimately be the goal. Now, half the students are not going to like math, so they're going to be happy with getting through geometry.
And frankly, that was probably the goal. Every math teacher who loves math would probably have loved that for decades. That's not anything new. By reducing this to writing, if you will, with the blessing of the board, we're saying is this is what we want to strive for every kid, at the very least. Now, a few kids are going to fall short, and some are going to far exceed. And I hate to put it in these terms, but if we don't adopt this, what we're saying is we're okay with the old system, because I can't guarantee
Not okay
you
with that.
how long it's going to take to come up with something different. And that doesn't mean, oh, I'm just taking this because it's all we had. I've already explained to you how much effort and thought and analysis was put into this. And if we discover in a very short period of time that our kids are flying through this with all kinds of success, yes, we should absolutely raise the bar.
Okay.
But if we don't raise it at least this far at this time, and I've been honest with you, this is what the teachers are implementing because it was not acceptable to me or Dr. Cochran that our bar remain where it was before.
Quite honestly, the short answer to the question, which I think is where Mr. Miller was going, is this the appropriate next step? Yes. Do I think it's well done? Yes. But as Julie points out, it's not going to get us where we're ready to go. But it's the path. It's the right path.
Path and the first steps. Okay. I make a motion to accept it.
We have a second.
Second.
So I have a couple of questions. Some of the lines, as you read down through the framework, have asterisks, and some don't.
Yes.
I
There's a
could not-
notation at the beginning of, after the grade level page, the very next page, there should be, that says, right there, integrate number concepts. Those asterisks indicate that that's a focus area for that grade.
Okay. I didn't see that.
So
I
if first
apologize.
grade is addition, everything with an asterisk means that this is related to addition. Now, geometry is not necessarily related. We still have to do geometry in first grade, but we just wanted to denote for the teachers those focus areas because, as Mahesh told us, 70 to 80% of each grade level should be on the big word, like addition, subtraction, fractions, whatever, for that particular grade level.
I see. So
That's why that's
those are almost
denoted.
like generic lines. Operations on multi-digit numbers with and without borrowing. Asterisk. Integrate division.
Yes.
Okay. Makes sense. Good question.
So my second question, I was comparing honors versus regular. Virtually no differentiation. I mean, like, so for honors geometry, there's like 4 more things in honors geometry that aren't in geometry. And I know we've heard complaints in the past that honors means more work, not necessarily harder work or more advanced work. And I'm concerned that we're bumping them a half a point in their GPA, and we're asking them to do some minimal amount of differentiated work or more advanced work. I don't know how to solve it. I don't know what the right answer is. To me, it didn't strike me when I looked at algebra, I looked at geometry, and I looked at one other
Algebra
one.
2.
Algebra
That's
2.
the only places
There's-
we have it.
there's
And
just-
in fact, a lot of places don't even offer honors Algebra 2 because by its very nature, Algebra 2 is an honors type course.
I just struggle internally with, we're
Some of those, to only partially reassure you that some of the additional topics actually, in a scope and sequence, take a lot of time. What I can provide you, there are scope and sequence documents that are in our Z drive that I asked them to do that are already available for you to look at. That's only part of the answer. The other part of the answer is that Dr. Cochran alluded to things we've discussed lately. I don't have the authority to ask teachers to go back and rewrite or rethink a lot of this. I make suggestions. My role is supportive. It's how my role is defined. I can ask questions. Typically, unless I'm with a committee, I would ask through the principals. So you've heard the parts that I feel strongly about because I feel like I can personally support that. However, I would say to you that I would agree that there are some areas, relatively minor, but still some areas that can be improved. Now, whether we get it improved before this initial adoption or it's done within a relatively short period of time so that it's revised and then adopted in that form, that's for you to decide.
My last question, or maybe not a question, but just a statement. We kind of fell off the consistency track at the end of the document as you got into the high school courses. We had this nice theme that you commented on. Here's the focus of what we're going to do in this. Earlier it's grade, later on it's course, and it kind of falls apart with the high school stuff. If I go back and look at,
You are correct.
like Algebra 2 Honors has it, and then the next one down is pre-calculus that just launches right into what they're going to do.
Well,
And I was
keep
looking.
in mind that you have administrators of those,
No,
that course area that.
So I approached it from a,
Mhm.
both from, I want to see the same pieces in there so I can measure it, but also if I was a parent and I was looking at this for my kid to take, and I'm going down and now I can compare, honors algebra and I can do that comparison. When I get in and all of a sudden pre-calculus doesn't look anything like, or calculus doesn't look anything like AP calculus, and neither one of them looks like anything I've looked at before, you kind of lose the concept of what you're trying to do. Particularly the AP calculus AB is a college syllabus. While I can read a college syllabus and understand, I don't think it's laying out the same
I wouldn't
structure that the other ones do. And I'm struggling with not having consistency because we're going to hand this to parents at some point. Somebody's going to say, I want to see the math framework for when my kids get to high school. And to quote MSNBC, one of these things is not like the other.
I think Barney says that too.
Yeah, or Sesame Street, or whatever the case is. And maybe it's probably a formatting of the content issue, but I believe they should be consistent. I'm not trying to poke anybody. When I read down through.
I think we're agreeing that it goes beyond that.
And that's what I'm struggling with, approving something that doesn't have a common frame of reference for what we're expecting. And maybe it makes perfect sense to the teacher or group of teachers that wrote it and that are going to go through and do it, but the document, fortunately, I believe, has a wider audience than the teachers and Dr. Heon and the rest of the administration. And that's what I struggle with. And I sympathize when you have all of the responsibility and none of the authority, because you're the one sitting here talking to us, not the people that actually authored the document.
Calculus is only 1 page long with 7 bullet points.
And you go
Compared
back
to
and
fourth
read
grade,
like
which is like 50
geometry,
pages long, yeah.
or any one of those. That's my struggle, and I don't know how to solve the problem, the issue, whatever you want to call it.
Well, I think that if you decide that it needs to be enhanced, then Dr. Cochran will decide how that message gets delivered.
If we
how it
did
gets
decide
done.
that, is it going to prevent anything from moving forward? I mean, obviously, you guys need to teach to some sort of framework, but you're already doing that, you said?
I think
We
it
could
would be
approve it as
help-
version 1.0.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to have it
Looking for
lesson
version
in
2.0 shortly?
concept.
Go with 2.1. Because we need, there are big chunks that we need to move forward with saying this is a dream.
Yeah.
Well, can we approve all but these ones here and keep that in a draft form?
I mean, I when I read through, I thought, the asterisk thing notwithstanding, which was my oversight, I thought the K through 8 laid it out fairly well.
Good, I did.
Here's what we're going to focus on, and then
Right.
here, and I would read down through and I'd pick something and say, okay, now this should fit into one of these 6 or 8 or 4 or whatever the areas were that up there, and you go back up and say, oh, that's number 3, and I go back down and read some more. And I was only picking at random, but and then I got down to when you got out of the grade level math and into the course math, I guess is how I would describe it, whether it's a semester or a year-long course, we kind of fell off the wagon, as it were, from the format perspective.
Once you get above Algebra 2, you
Really
don't
falls
have the
off.
structure from the Common Core, because now that you're branching out this way, and so you just fall to what we've done in the past.
Yeah.
It's a very valid.
So is there a
assumption.
way for, based on the concerns of the board, to approve this?
I would
with
recommend
the
that
idea
you approve this as version 1.0 and ask us when we'll have version 1.1 for you. Or K to 8 approved as is, and look forward to seeing our revisions in a few months.
The high school?
I would rather do the K through 8, because then we know for sure that it's going to come back to us. It won't get put into the back burner somewhere.
All right, I modify my motion to accept K through 8 math draft as our new blueprint for math education.
And I will second that modification.
And that way, at least we can chop the document. You can publish K through 8 and then work on a smaller
It's a very
subset.
helpful idea.
Because
Well, it gets us away from that cycle of.
you never finish anything.
Get it done and you never finish it,
That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, it's hard to do.
No, I don't disagree at all.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 5-0-0.
And I make a motion that we accept the high school as the draft is, but we ask them to go back and fix because the information is there, they just need to fix the format, do you think? Or do you just want to let it sit the way it is?
Well, I think Derek might have hit, there may be some depth problems on a couple of them. And
Okay.
it may just be, as Dr. Cochran said, because it's outside the bounds of the Common Core. But it doesn't mean, I don't believe, that we can't follow the same structure.
Okay. You
We
don't
may
have,
have, I think we may need some more
The
definition.
same level of clarity and alignment does not exist in the upper grades.
Yeah.
So is this something that we can get back in 30 days, 60 days?
We'll shoot for 60.
I'll second John's motion.
Any more discussion?
Before Trish leaves, can we get this back on our plate?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
to improve the high school.
As version 1.0 and come back with a date to. John, it was a rambling motion.
I think he accepted it, but didn't approve it.
Yeah, exactly.
Got them all, Jim. It was long and tedious, but you got them all?
Yes, that's everything. Excellent.
IJL,
We got the student report, we did the budget, FY15 budget.
policy that we have to align with.
oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Had to go back.
The,
I will print it out.
there's under old business, there's a FY15 budget line item, but there's no document.
Yeah, I don't know, I honestly don't know why it was put on there.
Okay.
Okay.
We're good there. So default budget?
You were presented another copy of the default budget that did have some minor adjustments to it, and I'll see if I can point those out for you. Actually, the minor adjustments were the increase, the anticipated increase in the bus contract and the utilities for water that the Budget Committee agreed to as well.
Has this gone through Gordon yet?
It is not until you folks decide that you like the final version.
Well, I thought we were gonna send the last one through.
That's all too.
Yeah. And he was gonna come back and say, this is what you had to change, this is what you were not supposed to change.
Sorry. I misread the minutes.
Getting Gordon's read on the default budget as
Yeah.
it stands now before we take an official stance.
I think it looks pretty good, minus I think the self-funded programs probably have to come out. But if Gordon says they can stay in.
Well, the self-funded programs have to stay in, but not at the increase? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah, because you need the appropriation.
Appropriate.
Yeah.
So we can change that and get that to Gordon and get his sign off on it.
Great.
I apologize, I misread the
No,
minutes.
that's fine, I just, we talked about a lot of things
Now,
last time we were here.
what was it that Jason had said about the paving?
Paving, it was an interesting point he brought up. What we did.
Where is it? I don't see it here.
Well, it's not here, it's probably somewhere else.
It's not on here because I believe it's the 55,000 for GMS that you took out of previous year, so it wouldn't be in this year's budget. I believe you encumbered the monies from last year's budget.
We encumbered June of,
Right, this year's default will be based on this year's budget, not last year's.
Correct.
Oh, good.
this is the default budget,
So this default
based on
budget
the
is
previous
based
year's
on this
expenditures.
year's budget.
This year's, yeah.
this year's expenditures.
And your GMS parking lot, I believe, was
last year.
taken, was encumbered from last year's.
Yeah,
So it
that's
wouldn't be in, it wouldn't be a
Wouldn't be
one-time
in the
expense.
budget this year.
Yeah, we did it last year.
I can,
Next
I
year's
can,
default is based on this year's budget.
right, I can confirm that, but I think
Yeah,
that's
well,
the
that
case.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Doesn't ring a bell with me, but let me,
We encumbered the money at the end of a budget year, which would have
Last
been
year.
June of last year.
yeah, we encumbered it.
Yeah. I think Jason.
Wouldn't
And it
Part
was
of-
done this summer, but the monies were encumbered from the previous year's budget. This default budget is based on the current year budget that you're in, so the GMS parking lot would not be in this year's budget.
It is the previous year. So this year's default,
This recommended default is based on this year's budget.
FY13-14.
this is gonna be interesting.
This is FY15 involved, so 2014 would be the previous year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that money.
But if
was
you
But it
taken
was
encumber the
out
from
of
the
money-
2013 budget that you encumbered the
But-
Yeah.
monies to do the GMS parking lot.
But if you encumbered the money and rolled it forward, it's not in this
It's not
year's
in the
budget,
budget.
even though it's an expenditure.
Correct. It's just an accounting adjustment when the auditors come back. So it's not in your budget. You don't have 55,000 in GMS for
This-
site improvement.
The way the law reads, it's interesting. The amount of the same appropriations is contained in the operating budget authorized for the previous year. So you could argue that the default budget for next year, because we're doing it this year, is based on last year.
No.
Not on the, I'm saying, that's what it says.
No, stop.
That-
I know it's
I
late.
can't make this up.
The fall
Read
budget
it.
is.
It's right
minutes
there.
to
The
10.
default budget for 15 is based on the prior years, which
That's what it
prior-
says.
It's
but
based on
prior
the
year of
2011
the-
year.
You're a good
Oh,
weatherman. Are you a good weatherman?
I don't make it up. Read what, for the previous year. It
Just
doesn't
gonna
say,
add to
it doesn't
community
say for
input.
the current year.
Hours.
You go one step forward and one back, not one forward and two back.
I'm not saying it's right. I'm
Scary
saying
part
it's
is I'm following you.
one
and it's like,
interpretation.
don't
You're
go
gonna make an
there.
interesting argument at some point in time.
Yes, somebody's gonna argue that it's based on the 13 budget.
Alrighty then.
Who would argue that point?
I don't know.
That's
Somebody somewhere.
That's not what we did last year.
I don't think we've ever done that. No one's ever done
Last
that.
year's
Previous-
default was based
I know
on
we've
the-
never done it,
But yeah.
but
The
when I
previous
actually.
year to the fiscal year 15,
Is this year?
the fall budget is fiscal year 14's budget. So you have to time warp yourself a little bit.
And I guess the only other questions are, do we want to balance out the utilities?
What do you mean by balance out?
Well,
Flatten them.
Flat line.
I think they should be flat. Well, I think we should leave it like this and see what Gordon
Gordon
says.
says, yeah.
Because ultimately, he or somebody that he knows very closely, if there's a challenge, will end up going with the chair and the superintendent, I'm sure, too.
That'd be next year's chair, right?
Depends.
Hey, just so you know, John Brunel was telling me that when they, when they spend the dollars over, it's the chair that they take away in handcuffs, so just be careful.
Okay.
What do we have in, is it the water that we've given notice of? But it's not a contract.
It's on the contract, but we've been told that it's gonna go up. It's a dicey area.
But
And it goes back to the, you
gotta
can
look
argue
outside of the
ED 306
contractual.
and
Right.
decide what the judge is gonna
you
say.
need, the default budget isn't just about contracts. And if you look at the RSA, again, it speaks to, you have to
Legal
to
obligation.
still operate your school district in the best interest to provide the best educational opportunities in the building. Building's got to have water, and if we've been told and project that we're going to have an increase to that water, you got to put it in the default budget, and I'll run that by Gordon.
I agree with you. I don't hear Gordon say it.
Yeah, we just want Gordon to say that.
I mean, I think what,
I'm not gonna
what
throw the lawyer in jail, you know?
what Gordon has said in the past is it's as determined by the governing body.
Right.
That's us.
And it's, his opinion was it would be difficult for a judge to say that
Right.
the governing body can't determine that, or they determined it incorrectly. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I remember him saying that the governing
You know
body.
what, maybe sometimes
Or the,
just-
if it's the budget committee.
Sometimes it's better to just have the challenge and get it over with.
Yeah, there's been at least, I thought there was
I mean,
one in
we've
the
lived
state.
under that umbrella of the $200 expenditure for 5 years. Maybe it's time it gets spent.
I don't know. But I'd like to see what Gordon has to say before
Okay,
we
we'll get that done tomorrow.
push the button.
Okay.
I know he enjoys this so much.
Yes,
He
it
does.
thrills him when he's sitting at the table there.
All right, revenue projections? Did these change at all, or?
These did not change at all.
Okay, so we don't need to go through those.
So I'm not gonna have a default budget for tomorrow.
A draft.
I'll have a draft.
No,
They don't need that for tomorrow, yeah, we don't need that.
Okay,
default budget has to be done
Revenue
7
projections,
days
did you send
before
those
delivery.
did you send those to Andrew?
Has to be done 7 days
After
before
this board
delivery.
meeting, sir,
Okay.
I will. Board sees first, and then the budget committee will see
And
thereafter.
since the contract has been tentatively approved, can you send just the financial aspect?
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to see the, the budget committee doesn't need to see the writing.
I'm
They
sure
just-
they're gonna
They're
ask.
gonna ask for it.
Yeah, last year we sent them the
My past
summary.
experience has been, you're better off giving them the tentative.
You're gonna give them the things you showed us tonight?
if
Okay,
that's-
so
if
you'll
that's your
send those
wish.
out to Andrew too?
We will do that. We will make him a happy man tomorrow. We'll give him all kinds of information.
Yeah, I think he's beginning to panic.
warrant articles. Already filled out everything, look at that.
These are our draft warrant articles, some of which are new to you folks. Number 5 in particular, relative to the results of last evening's building committee, subcommittee. So some of this information is new, but these again are with the able assistance of our board secretary. We were able to pull this together today. Some of the changes that you'll see as well, I'm trying to pull it up myself here. last year, the school district voted to have projected estimated tax impact on your warrants for this year. That was a new legislation that came in last year. The school district did vote to have that, so you'll see that'll be added on to each of the articles. Interestingly, the school district passed that just special warrant articles needed the estimated tax impact, but not, which number 5 would be considered not a special warrant article, but I included that anyways. I figured just for consistency, we will put the potential tax impact on it. So again, this is draft language, subject to DRA and legal review, and obviously your approval as well on the articles.
Do we want to vote on these next week? I know sometimes we like to see them before we vote.
And I can give you some additional backup on it as well.
Or the week after. Is that too late? The 22nd?
They don't have to have them for the budget here.
Okay, but when do we need to have them by?
You need to have them 7 days before delivery.
That's the
For
5th,
posting,
right?
yeah.
February 5th, so we could vote the 22nd and be fine. Unless people want to vote on them now. I think I'd kind of like to think about them.
Well, it's really, I think, again, for Article 1, for instance, you folks as a board have a recommended budget that you provided to the Budget Committee, but they still not have voted on bottom line.
That number could change, so we can't
So
vote on
that
that
number
yet.
may or may not change tomorrow evening. Article 2 is.
Article 2 we already voted on, right? That went 4-1, right?
Well, you voted.
3-1.
You voted to approve the tentative agreement, but this would be, you'd need to vote on the article now itself, just to have your vote on recommending it now by the school board.
So people could actually change their vote for that?
I am not stumped too often, Mr. Chair,
Well-
but that one,
That's a very good question. Better run that one by legal counsel.
I thought they were one and the same, but I could be wrong, I guess. I don't remember ever
It kind of feels
voting a
like
second.
It
We
is-
already did.
Yeah, I don't remember ever voting a second time on that.
No.
Okay.
so you can carry forward,
4-1?
yep. Some boards will vote a
3-1.
second time.
Dennis wasn't here.
He was here. He was here.
Oh, did you vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I stopped
we will-
sweating when he came in.
And as you did last year with your warrants, the tally will be posted along with the recommended action. And then just to review them real quick, through the chair, number 3 was it was discussed regarding the part-time computer teacher at GMS. Article 4 was to take from the unassigned fund balance up to $50,000 to fund the capital reserve for building maintenance. And, excuse me, Article 5 was based on the recommendation from the building committee last evening on to purchase equipment for the FOBs for the GMS and LMS, and also to increase the capacity and upgrade, if you will, for CHS, and also the panic alarm. And that totaled $36,700.
So that's panic alarms, install access controls, key fob at LMS and GMS, and that are programmable.
Right.
And upgrade these to programmable.
To programmable.
So you basically would be a level.
So programmable could be teachers work from 6:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Administrators work, or custodians work all hours of the day, kind of thing.
And didn't we discuss also access to certain rooms for certain
Mhm.
events?
Yep.
Over time, if you combine this with some access control inside the building, you could, for example, LMS gym. So somebody could set up to come in on Saturday morning. They can come in that door with their key fob, and they have access to the gym, the washrooms, the changing rooms, and that's it.
Yeah.
Only that day and only during a
Only that
time
day and
frame.
during that
That time
Yeah.
slot, that's
Yeah.
not okay.
Saturday
That's huge.
mornings,
That's a-
8:55 to
Yep. Was, the thought on the ordering, was it deliberate? In the ordering of the articles? I
No.
know 1 and 2.
No, 1 and 2, there was no, again, it's at the discretion of the board.
I guess I just kind of would expected, what is 4 was 3, so I would have expected it would have remained 3 or moved to 5, but I was just curious if there was a thought process as
Nope.
to how those were put together.
Nope.
There is some people that believe the further down the ballot you go, the more likely somebody is to vote no. I don't know whether that's true or not.
Started to move them around at the wish of the board. Obviously, as you
How
said.
many
one
warrant articles
removed.
the town's gonna have yet?
Well, he's first talked a
17.
lot.
I don't know.
But then he
Well,
said-
they were talking one time that they had like, 20,
Yeah.
they were discussing and working on over 20 warrant articles at one point in time, so I have no idea where they're. 24?
24 at the time, but
Yeah,
then
they said
I don't
they
know
did-
where, what they whittled
and then
down.
they cut them down because they were
Yeah.
encumbering some vehicle
Oh, okay.
funds.
John mentioned the last meeting that they had cut them down. He didn't say by how many, though.
22.
22, yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I could just briefly update the committee, and I will do it briefly in this time. You heard about the oil situation. Just a quick overview of what has transpired. December 16th, as you are aware, and you heard this evening from Principal Thompson, we had ran out of oil at the elementary school. And we informed the oil company that we had run out of oil. They said, oh, you're scheduled for tomorrow. As you heard before, too, we had a problem with the burner that was causing it to have a flame come out of the side of it. So all of us not being that technical on HVAC thought the burner was probably running a little bit more than it should have been, consuming more oil than it should have been. So we kind of contributed to that. And then, as you heard again, on Christmas Eve, we had another situation at the middle school. Long and the short of it is, the district has for years been involved with this particular vendor, have been an auto delivery. There has never been an issue. We didn't think we had an issue to the extent that we didn't know of any other situation that was going on the 16th of December. So we planned accordingly, then when all of that happened. Make a long story short, we did make the decision, Dr. Cochran and I had discussed with, between us here in district. We were receiving some deliveries, as you've heard, those are 10,000 gallon tanks, and we were hearing we'll get 2,000, we got 700. We'll get 3,000, we got 1,000. Our projected burn-off for those schools during the cold time is about 200 gallons a day. So 700 gallons isn't going to get us too far. So we made the decision to work with our group. As you've seen, we have a consortium that we work with. We went out and negotiated with a company out of Quincy, Massachusetts, to deliver. And the deal was we had to take the whole truck, not physically the truck, but whatever the contents were in that truck we had to take. And it was 9,000 gallons. And we delivered, it looks like this evening, definitely at LMS, I haven't received confirmation at GMS yet, but 4,500 gallons at each of those. That'll bring us up to about pretty close to 8,000 gallons at the school. We have notified the contracted vendor of the district that we were doing this, and we would like to continue with our relationship. However, we would need to have a sit-down and make sure that there's some assurances that the district does not have another incident as we've experienced over the past 2 weeks. There's been some concern, does the district prepay with our current vendor, and the answer to that is no. We are on invoice. We are a fixed price contract with the vendor, and there's no prepay. So the money that we spent negotiating with the company out of Massachusetts, we fully encumber the budgeted amount, so we just simply spent that money. We're on an invoice with them, and I want to thank the custodial staff at GMS and LMS and the folks that we work with down in Massachusetts, that they were tremendous help to us, and they're every day sticking the tanks to get a read, and it's something that they weren't doing routinely because, again, the district never ran into an issue with it. So I'm happy to say that our tanks are almost full, and I can tell you a lot, and probably more than you ever want to know about the Portsmouth low price and the margin and all these other good things that we've learned over the day. But again, a lot of cooperation and some assurances that we're well past it, and we have some more work to do with the current vendor, but we'll hopefully work through that with them.
The delivery we got today, was it close to the price we would normally pay, or?
It was, I haven't seen the exact price. Again, the way the oil commodities work, it's whatever the price is on the rack rate for and then they margin it out at a percentage. Projection is probably about 20 cents, around the vicinity of 20 cents additional per gallon. Now, that's, there's two ways to look at that.
Yeah.
The fixed price that we've got is extremely competitive relative to the wholesale price of oil today is, I just happen to know, is around $3.17 a gallon. And our fixed price is competitive to that. So we did pay more, but again, we felt the amount that we were spending, as you know, the risk of running out of fuel.
Frank has invested a ton of time in this in the last couple of weeks, and still, stayed up on the budget stuff and the other stuff. But other people have come to the party more recently, and I think some districts have decided that they're just going to go away from the vendor.
Right.
And we discussed it and felt that whatever price we can get at, whatever oil we can get at that competitive price, we should take, but we should not.
Right.
Not run out of oil, in essence. So
right.
We're trying to hold them accountable.
That's right.
We spend a lot of time working with them to try and get them to abide by the contract, but at the same time not put the schools at risk and doing it as cheaply as we can.
Right.
So we felt it was prudent to top up both tanks.
Right.
And on the bulletin board at 5:29, Keith posted that there was a truck at GMS, or a tanker truck.
Tanker truck. Yep.
A tanker
And
truck.
his next question was, did we prepay? And I've already replied indicating, no, we haven't prepaid with that.
Now,
So,
what does this do to our budget? Are we going to start even?
It doesn't, there's really no impact. I showed Dr. Cochran my quick analysis, because again, we're trying to this had to all be done in like the morning, because we had to make the commitment to the other. We've actually, the amount that I think we're going to pay for this truck will be less than what the budgeted amount was. We actually budgeted, I don't have the exact numbers, I can get it for you, but I think what we're gonna end up paying is still below what we had budgeted for. The problem, the concern that I have, and must put it on the table, is consumption. Because again, we budget based on trends, and if this trend continues, this winter is going to be a well below average, and
They're now calling for a significant thaw in January, so hopefully.
that's good. We want that. Not too
So-
slowly and consistently, though.
so I guess
Like 45 degrees.
I would encourage you, if you're gonna talk to Fred Fuller, to say we wanna recoup the difference that we had to
I was thinking
pay.
the same thing.
You've already said you can't meet the contract, so you want us to stay with you. I assume they want us to stay with them, given they got people abandoning them. We're looking to recover the extra we had to pay to Company Y because you were unable to fulfill the contract, just to see what they say.
At the advice that we've received, and obviously it's prudent business practice, that any costs that we've incurred, had to call Honeywell twice, once for each school to come in and do what they needed to do to get those burners refired. We've had some overtime, we've had some costs associated with it. We will continue to tally that, if you will, and then as we get through the end of the season, we'll look at what the liability, what the incurred costs have been, and then make a business decision on whether or not to pursue. That's prudent.
We have to throw a compliment out here to our custodial staff. When GMS ran out, Dave Ross was in there middle of the night, cleaned the filters, the burners, got everything back up and going. And then when LMS ran out, actually it was a pretty collaborative effort among the three staffs.
Right.
To get everything done and make sure that no damage was done to the boilers. So,
And also,
they've done a great job.
Matt Bennett, on Friday, which was that weather day, we couldn't get through to Fuller, as you've heard, it's well documented.
We had phone problems.
He became Matt Bennett courier for Litchfield School District. I had him going over to hand deliver and knock on doors, and he literally was waiting in line with other folks. And whether or not it's good, when we sent him over on Monday to hand deliver the notification that we were going to utilize another vendor, they waved him on in because they recognized who he was. So Matt really has taken a real a lot of cooperation from everyone here in the district. It was a bad situation and one that, was just, hopefully we'll never have to experience again. On a lighter note, one quick, just on the, there was some discussion in the past meeting, and we've actually have pursued researching other software for our food service. We've experienced some blips, if you will, in the software, and we have a temporary fix through Kyle and Hilda have worked through that, but we know it's temporary, and we know another blip is down the road. When and where it happens, which school, we're not sure. So you will be receiving from us probably pretty soon a recommendation as to a new software program that will include software and some hardware considerations, and Hilda and IT are working on that right now. Kyle is doing some work on the numbers, so we want to bring some pretty solid numbers to you when we come. But we have it, we have a cap on it right now. We're okay. The Band-Aid's there. It's just how long it lasts before we run into another problem with it.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
NHSBA resolutions, I think Brian's going next Saturday.
This Saturday.
This is coming Saturday? Okay. I think we discussed last week.
Gave
we're just gonna-
direction last time.
Yeah, just to basically.
Sit in the
agree
corner.
with- Yeah. Sit in the corner.
Smile.
Eat snacks.
Smile.
Eat snacks. Excellent.
No comment.
No comment. We have a robotics grant from Schneider Electric for $5,000.
Nice.
Make a motion to accept.
I'll second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 5-0-0. Any questions on the manifest?
Was there even one?
Yeah, it's
Done?
already, would you?
Nice.
I can retrieve it if you
No,
wish to
I'm
sign it.
okay.
It's already in the
I
office
trust
of the
the
chief
3 august
accountant.
members of this board that signed it.
Checks will be in the mail in the morning.
Public input.
Try to make it brief. Just well done on the oil situation. We're not the only district that had the issue, and so, it's good to hear. We heard a little bit about it, and I was like, wow, I didn't realize we did. And then thank you to Frank for explaining that, because that was well done. Thank you. With regards to the default budget, great point in that it was the year before, but all that means then is the current budget we're under, which was the default, was incorrectly calculated to be on the ballot last year, because that was a one-time expenditure for the previous year. So you should have taken I know it's after the fact, because you're doing it at the end of the year after the ballot is done, but this year's budget would be $55,000 less, because the default budget that passed would not or should not have included the $55,000 one-time expenditure from the year before. I won't go where Dennis went, though. That was over the top. I wouldn't even go there.
Just go read it. and-
I know, believe me, I've read it. Math, right? Why build from zero? I heard that conversation, and I have to agree with Mr. York, is that I'm not quite satisfied with where we're still going with math. There are a large number of folks out there, that are going away from what Common Core is doing, because when you start reading about what Common Core is doing, there's a reason why it doesn't go beyond 10th grade. Mark Tucker does not believe that public education goes beyond the 10th grade. It should end there. And that's what this work, I'm trying to think of the buzzword there, the workforce skills. You don't need highly educated people. You're kind of dumbing down the entire thing. So when you start reading Mark Tucker and understanding who he is, and he's the architect of all this, you'll start understanding why it doesn't go beyond the 10th grade. Math curriculum programs, all that stuff exists out there. You call it what you will. The issue is also, when you guys go, you really should go find out. The Smarter Balanced Assessment has been out there now for a year or two in other states who are piloting this, and it's a train wreck. educators everywhere are screaming about this because it's just horrendous. Go read it on your own. I mean, I've been forwarding it to some of you, and you look, and I get feedback from some of you that say, I don't want to hear it, you're just complaining. I'm not trying to complain you, I'm just trying to say go read it. I'm not the one making it up, I'm just forwarding you information that's out there. There's plenty of people that love it, but you got to kind of weigh both sides of the argument and understand what it is that we're implementing in our district. And there's a lot of issues that are true right now out there. Go look at New York and Kentucky and Wisconsin and these other places who have had some real horrible experiences with Smarter Balance. Now, the other big thing about this is teachers can become a scapegoat. I mean, it's all pushed right at the teacher. Teachers are at fault. Absolutely, I heard it tonight. The key to everything is instruction, and who does that is teachers, right? Well, this is. I'm surprised these folks haven't been screaming too much about it. They need to go read and find out what's going on in other states with this. Their whole, this is really draconian towards teachers, unfairly, and so what you're going to see is, because it's so draconian, it's going to be a natural tendency of human beings to teach to Smarter Balance, so they come out from underneath the consequences, the negative consequences that go along with Smarter Balance. So, it's just what it is. And then just a minute ago, that's my last thing, or two last things. Utilities, we will pay for them. ED 306 says we will provide for a school. There's money in that default budget. Regardless of what the number is, you will heat this building. Something else may not get done, but you will heat it. It doesn't mean that utilities, though, change, or the funding, or the appropriation changes. It just means that something else you may have wanted to appropriate, which is not ED 306, doesn't get done. So you can't hold up hostage the kids' well-being because you want to batten the default budget by that much. I'm sorry, but it's just what it is. I may not like it either, but that's regardless of the fact. And the last thing is, someone said, John said, I can't believe that people wouldn't stand up and say something at a staff meeting that they disagreed with, or that we had an attitude or an environment here where people wouldn't tell the principals, hey, we should do this or shouldn't do that. Yet when a staff member came to this meeting tonight, we shut him right down because we didn't want to hear what he had to say. Now he didn't say much, right? But the fact of the matter is, community forum, I was on this board when we developed that policy. Staff members are community. We agreed on that in that policy, that staff members, just like a deliberative, we treat like the community because they're our people. And so when a staff member wants to come up and say something, maybe it wasn't what this board wanted to hear, but he didn't have much to say. He just wanted to say he doesn't agree with it. And his position was, I don't like it. Okay. But you shut him right down. Quite honestly, someone at home goes, what's the problem? It looked bad. The optics on it were horrible. Because he kept talking, you kept shutting him down. You kept talking, you kept shutting him down. And in the end, he really didn't say much. So just be aware of that. Thanks.
And with that, I need a motion to enter non-public session under RSA 91A 311 for A, the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, or the disciplining of such employee, or the investigation of any charges against him unless the employee affected, 1, has a right to a meeting, and 2, request the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted. B, the hiring of any such person as public employee. C, matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the body or agency itself, unless such person requests an open meeting.
Right.
Second.
Yes.
Yes.
Certainly.
Certainly.